You lied to me. Okay. I've asked our city manager, Roger Carter, if he will offer our invocation, and Councilwoman Granger, she will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Move on to item 1, approval of the agenda.
So made.
I have a motion and a second.
Ward aye. Clough aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellison aye.
Item 2, announcements. If I may take a mayoral privilege, I'd like to thank Councilman Turk and Councilman Belliston and Councilwoman Granger for their wonderful effort. Politics is real hard. Government is very intrusive. It really is. And not that it's really meant to be, but it is. You know, they plan a subdivision and several people get mad because it blocks their views. And I get that. But they have faced some great challenges with dignity and class. And I appreciate that. And stay in touch. You know, I know Jeff's been around for decades, it seems like. He's my mentor. And I just want to let you know how much I've appreciated not only what you've done and do for our city, but for your friendship. That means a lot more to me than anything else. So thank you, and may you enjoy all the blessings that you deserve from this day forward. So thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. That's much appreciated. I'll save my farewell speech for the end of the meeting because I don't want to start now.
Okay, then we'll move on to item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Do we have any to declare at this time? Move on to item 4, our consent agenda. It's quite lengthy, so be patient with me. To approve the minutes from the city council meetings of 11/12/13, 11/13, 2019, the board audit report for November 2019, our local consent to approve the renewal of the following off-premise license: Albertsons First Stop, Freeway Chevron, Hart's Gas and Food, Maverick, The Service Station, Terrible Hertz Incorporated, Walmart, Item 2, consideration to approve the renewal of the following on-premise licenses: Black Bear Diner, Coral Canyon Grill, Don Pedro's, Coral Cafe, Red Robin Gourmet Burgers, Royal Thai Cuisine, St. Helens of Washington. Item 3, consideration to approve the renewal of the following on-premise recreational licenses: Coral Canyon Golf Course, Green Spring Golf Course. Item 4, consideration to approve renewal for the following bar license: Coral Cafe and Entertainment. Item D1, consideration to approve a final plat for Paseos at Siena Hills, Phase 1, located approximately 900 north, 2200 east, extension of Grapevine Crossing. Applicant Brennan Holdings, number 100, Jim Raines. Item 2, consideration to approve a final plat for Paseos. Am I saying that right, Jim? Good enough? Thanks. At Siena Hills, Phase 2, located approximately 1100 north, 2200 east, extension of Grapevine Crossing. Applicant Brennan Holdings, number 100, Jim Raines. Item 3, consideration to approve a final plat for Queens Ridge, located approximately east of Harmon Land and Farmland Drive. Applicant Stephen Simister. Item 4, consideration to approve a final plat for Whitworth Estates, located approximately 240 east and north of Harvest Lane. Applicant Justin Whitworth. Item 4, consideration to approve a final plat for Crimson Fields Phase 1 subdivision, located approximately Treasure Valley Road 380 east. Applicant Development Solutions Group Incorporated. Item 6, consideration to approve a final plat for Crimson Fields Phase 2 subdivision, located at approximately Treasure Valley Road 435 East. Applicant Development Solutions Group Incorporated. There's no questions or comments on any of that. I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as been read.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Turdick, aye.
Ellison, aye.
Granger, aye.
Clef, aye.
Ward, aye.
Thank you very much. Those are all approved. Item 5, finance. Presentation of the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. Hinton Burdick, PLLC.
Thank you, Mayor. Get a presentation up here on the. Kimberly's going to help me with advancing the slides. I appreciate her helping. All right, so yeah, I'm Dave Whitwer with Hinton Burdick. We're the auditors of the city, and tonight I'm going to go over the audit for the year ended June 30, 2019. So next. So I'll first touch on our audit reports and findings, and then go over a few financial highlights. If you have questions as I go along, please let me know. So, all right. So here's a list of our various audit reports. We've issued a governance letter. It's a separate 3-page letter that includes our standard required communications to the governing body. No significant issues or concerns there. Page 1 of the financial statements is our main independent auditor's report. And we've issued an unmodified or a clean opinion, so no issues there. Report on compliance and on internal control over financial reporting, page 79 of the financial statements. There are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies noted, so that's a positive, and point out the great job that the management and staff do there with the accounting and so forth. And then finally, on page 81 is our report on state compliance. Again, an unmodified or clean opinion. However, there were 3 instances of non-compliance, as we'll show on the next slide. The state auditor's office puts out a guide, a compliance guide that lists the items that we as auditors are required to look at each year. And these 3 items were noted. I'll briefly touch on those. budgetary compliance financial reports. There's a state requirement that the governing body should formally review and financial reports at least quarterly and document that in the meeting. And we only noted that documented twice in the for fiscal year 19. However, as noted in management's response on page 87, the monthly financial information is available to the public as well as the council on an ongoing basis on the website. But as noted in the response, management has plans to make sure that the quarterly review is done quarterly and documented. Budgetary compliance appropriations. The irrigation fund had expenses in excess of the budget of nearly $75,000, and that was primarily due to depreciation expense on contributed capital not being budgeted. And then finally, fund balance. The state has a maximum fund balance that's 25% of total current year revenues. And as of June 30, 2019, the city had unrestricted fund balance of over 1.1 million and over above that 25% maximum. So
Thank you, Councilwoman Granger. Way to go.
yes.
You know, I've always felt that as long as we have debt, we actually don't have a fund balance.
Yeah. So, and as we'll see, it's significant improvement that has been made over the last 5 years as the fund balance was kind of towards the other end of the spectrum a number of years ago. So, all right, let's move along to some of the financial highlights. So I'll first touch on the general fund. So this is the general fund balance sheet trends for the last 5 fiscal years. Pull up the notes here. The pink line there is the liabilities of the general fund. And you can see that's pretty consistent with the previous year. The bottom line is total fund equity, a significant increase for the year of about 1.9 million, and to that ending balance of nearly 7 million, and a corresponding increase in assets, that top line. The majority of that 7 million in fund balance is unassigned fund balance, nearly 6 million. So that's not tied up with any restrictions, and that's available to carry forward for future periods, future years. And again, that's partly why that state compliance issue of being over the maximum fund balance. You can see there that bottom line fund balance back in fiscal year 15 was below $1,642,000. So on the low end there, and obviously with the increases in recent years, that fund balance is up to that higher level. So if we move,
You know, I appreciate the mention of my name, but the staff has worked remarkably hard to make that reserve available to the city should we ever have some dip in resources that are critical. And I really do appreciate how hard they work to make that happen.
good comment. All right, next. So this shows staying with the general fund. The top line is revenues for the general fund. The pink line is expenditures. You can see obviously revenues have exceeded expenditures significantly the last 4 fiscal years, and that's why that fund balance has increased. Both revenues and expenditures were up for fiscal year 19. And if we go to the next one here, this gives you a breakdown of the expenditures, compares fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 18 by function. So you can see general government's up about 600,000, and that was mainly due to a new building maintenance department. There was a corresponding decrease in some of the other departments and functions. Public safety is also up significantly, about 17%, and that's mainly due to personnel expenses and capital outlays. All right, let's go to the next. So this shows some of the significant revenues for the city. Sales tax, it's kind of interesting to note, over the last 5 years, we've had increases in those revenues. That over that 5-year period, there's over about a 50% increase. For fiscal year 19, the increase was about 7.5%. And property tax, same thing, increases in each of the last 5 years, about just over 30% increase for that 5-year stretch. You can see for fiscal year 19 that it has tapered off some. There's about a 1.2% increase for fiscal year 19. All right, now I'll touch on the utility funds, focus on the major funds. And the format here for each of the next 4 slides, you can see I've compared fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 18. I've listed the operating activity, and then that kind of that middle line, income or loss before transfers and capital contribution. That includes both operating activity and non-operating activity, such as impact fees, investment earnings, interest expense. So for the water fund here, you can see there was a net operating loss of about $80,000. But when you include the non-operating activity, there's an increase of about $1.8 million. And as far as where that ends up at the end of the fiscal year, you can see that unrestricted equity. That's kind of an important number to look at because that's essentially what's available for future periods as you carry over to the next fiscal year. And unrestricted equity is not tied up in any capital assets. It's not tied up in restricted impact fees. No restrictions there. So if you compare that, you can see the water fund here has unrestricted equity of nearly $6.8 million. And if you compare that to operating expenses for the year, that unrestricted equity is able to cover operating expenses 1.1 times. So let's go the same thing, same format for the sewer fund. Operating loss of about just over $400,000 for the year, but when you include the non-operating activity, there was an increase of over $700,000. So that puts unrestricted equity at nearly $6.5 million, and that's enough to cover annual operating expenses 3.2 times. So that's a very significant reserve there. Electric fund, net operating income of over $600,000 for the year. And when you include non-operating activity, the income was nearly $2.5 million. Unrestricted equity, the end of June was just over $9 million. And that covers operating expenses about 70% of annual operating expenses. And then finally, for the storm drain fund, net operating loss of $900,000. That's a little deceiving there. For fiscal year 19, there was a unique, pull the right one here, Virgin River Restoration Project that's included in there. And that was primarily covered by a FEMA grant of nearly $700,000, which is included in the non-operating activity for the revenues. So actually an increase of $500,000 there, over $500,000. So unrestricted equity of nearly $1.9 million, and that's covers nearly about 90% of operating expenses. And to wrap up, this is a list of all the other funds of the city, all the non-major funds. So this is the total equity, assets less liabilities, as of June 30, 19 as well as 18. You can see the capital projects fund for recreation, significant increase there, mainly due to impact fees exceeding capital outlay and transfers out. Capital projects fund street also had a significant increase, over $2.2 million for the year. And that's mainly due to impact fees and transfers in exceeding capital outlay activity. So that you can see almost 7.6 million, over 7.6 million there for the streets. That is restricted for capital outlay. And irrigation, you can see the significant balance there at the bottom of over 5.1 million. That is essentially all investment in capital assets. There's been significant capital contribution, non-cash contributions over the years there. All right. Any questions? Just want to thank the staff again. Appreciate Kimberly, Brian, and all those who help us complete the audit. And they do a great job, and appreciate all they do. So,
Any questions? Excuse me, any questions for Dave? Thank you very much for your time and effort on that.
thank you.
I appreciate the work that you did with the finance committee and the thoroughness of the information that you've provided us. Excellent job.
All right, we'll move on. Item 6, master fee schedule. Consideration to approve amendments to the master fee schedule for Washington County solid waste and credit card fees. City Treasurer Kerry Wheelwright.
Council, Mayor. You have the information on the council executive summary that I send in on the waste fees. And I was wondering if you have any questions after reading through and reviewing what we were proposing there.
So you've got a couple of items here, and we're only really looking at the credit card in addition to the credit card bills, correct?
We are looking at right now the solid waste fees.
Increase. Was that, I guess this would go with Councilman Belliston, he sits on that board.
Yeah,
Was
they
that a
actually have,
built-in- Was that a built-in?
they have a
increase as part of
scheduled
the
increase.
contract?
yeah, they have a scheduled increase that goes annually, and actually the last couple of years they haven't done that scheduled increase, so that's why you haven't seen it in a few years.
Yeah, and the admin portion, which is our portion, kind of the same scenario. For a couple of years, we chose not to do that as part of the same thing with solid waste, and now it's just coming to this current year. So it's a preset schedule.
Will you remind me, that's a 25-cent increase, correct?
It's 25% or 25-cent increase on the Washington County Solid Waste District side. And then the city has asked for a 45-cent increase to catch up with what we were supposed to have increased over the last 6 years.
And that's 25 cents per, what is that? How does
Twen-
that?
twen-
per
25
ton? Is
cent.
that per
household.
household per month?
There's a summary down at the bottom of that executive summary that should show you what the fees are right now and what the proposed fees would be.
So it's about 70 cents a month, basically, increases.
Exactly. 45 cents of that would come to the city, 25 cents would go to the waste district.
Have our, I guess we're saying that our city, I mean, we have to absorb or pass through what the waste district is increasing, but have our costs increased that much? Have we added staff? What have we done to merit that increase?
Well, it's just a cost that is increased because of the administration that we have to do in billing and collecting, and the admin fees that we have on top of that has increased over the years. We haven't taken an increase in the city's portion of that since 2012.
Yeah.
So you have your salaries and your benefits, and that cost.
Of course, we do add more people, so we add more money that way.
So this is, we're the administrative arm for the solid waste. And that's why, but we have to capture that, our portion of the administrative arm of the solid waste, they pick up the revenue. So this, again, was kind of forecasted originally, and
There was actually an ordinance passed back in 2009, 2009-22, which called for that 15 cent per 2 years increase. So we should be at the 145 now. We've chosen not to take that over the last 3 2-year periods of time to try and keep the costs down as low as we possibly could. But we we really can't absorb those costs any longer.
Are we making a motion on each one individually or together?
Want to adopt the new fee schedule?
Okay, then I will entertain that motion.
Yeah, Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve the amendments to the master fee schedule for Washington County Solid Waste and the credit card fees.
I'll second.
I have a-
So sorry, that was my original question, was are we discussing both at the same time, or are we just, because they're on the agenda as two separate items, correct?
They're on the agenda as one separate.
Yeah, you're
Well, they're
adopting
documented
One
separately, that's
separate
right.
fee schedule.
Yeah, so the credit card fees, you've already adopted the adjustment. We always bring the master fee schedule back as an adoption of the new master fee schedule. So you already approved that. It's just the master fee schedule is now being approved.
Okay, I'll continue. We have a motion that, and a second.
Turner,
Ellison, aye.
Granger, aye.
Cliff, aye. Ward, aye.
All right, thank you. That is approved. Item 7.
Thank you.
Yeah, Carrie, thank you. Preliminary plat, consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Lakeside Stuckey Farms located approximately Stuckey Farms Parkway and south of the crossroads at Stuckey Farms. Applicant Carl Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, the applicants request an approval of the preliminary plat for Lakeside at Stuckey Farms. This applicant is proposing 51 lots and the area of coverage is 23.03 acres. The zoning designation, its location is the Stuckey Farms Planned Community Development, or the Stuckey Farms PCD as we refer to. Surrounding zoning to this particular subdivision is the Stuckey Farms PCD to the north, south, east, and west. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances at this location. Staff reviewed the request and recommended approval with conditions of the preliminary plat to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and reviewed this request at their November 20th, 2019 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for Lakeside at Stuckey Farms subdivision onto you, the City Council. That's based on the findings and subject to the conditions. The standard of first 11 are our standard conditions. Number 12, 13, and 14 are extras, and I'll just read those briefly before any certificates of occupancy can be issued within this subdivision. The master amenity known as the farmhouse will have to have its certificate of occupancy already awarded to it. Number 13, in the northwest corner, through lots 31 and 32, there needs to be provided an access to the lake. I'll kind of zoom in on the Planning Commission was okay with any one of these lots. We just put it on those two lots. They just want an access that the residents can get to the lake in that area, so they don't have to walk too far around. Item 14 was all open space within the vicinity will be completed at final plat application time, and that's basically the area that you see that's highlighted out in the green. That open space, whatever they're going to be finishing that with, will have to be completed.
Do we describe what that completion looks like? Do we have a standard that they?
No, but there is a trail that runs. It's a master trail that runs through it that they have already pre-planned. We'd fall back on the PCD to see if that area had anything specific, and pretty much it'll have if that's either natural open space or if it's a landscape thing. So they'll just have to follow the approved PCD on that.
trail is a part of it.
The trail is in part of that, yes.
Okay, so I just wondered if when we say completed, our idea of completed might be different from the developer's idea of what is completed.
Well, that's where we fall back onto the PCD. It pretty much spells out a lot of those areas, and they'll have to, whatever it says on that, that's the driving answer to that question, is what that is stated out in there, and we'll make sure that's followed at that time. So that's it. I'll be glad to answer any questions that the council might have on the preliminary plat for Lakeside.
What is the access around the lake like? It's hard for me
Yeah, I'm going to
Requiring
defer
access to get there, but what's there when they get there?
water,
Is
but
there-
yeah.
there a
Is there-
trail
is
around the
there
lake?
enough green space around that people can?
I'm going to revert that because again, it's not part of this plat, this particular one. It's part of their open space as part of their PCD. And I'm going to turn that over to the applicant to address what their plan is there. So
What wasn't the planning commission's part of their concern on that was emergency access, so that if someone was in an emergency situation, like
it was both access for the residents, but also access for emergency to get through and have, if there's something that happens, say, up in this portion, they don't want the emergency people have to travel all the way around. So they, that it was twofold to have that access punched through there for anything like that.
I know this will be deferred to the applicant. I'd like him to try to explain where they had their vision to the council of where maintenance would be able to access not only just people, because there's concepts for emergency, concepts for maintenance overall to maintain it, and just where those lines would go don't show well on this, and I think it'd be good for the applicant to show us, the council, where that would be.
Okay, I will make note just for help. And you look down on this portion of the lake, so that kind of curved piece at the bottom, that's actually a road. And it's also, when you look to the piece, it's at the angle at the 45 down at the bottom, that's a road as well. So you'll have, all that will be road frontage, just to help you in that, at least on the southern part of this lake. I can answer that for them, but then we'll have them come up and address what the rest of the plan is around it. So.
Just for reference, it's whenever with the PCDs, whenever they come in, it's helpful to have an overall PCD plan at the same time in our packet, because when it falls out of the packet, we have nothing to refer back to. So we can just include that in the future.
That'd be fine.
Thank you, Councilman Ellison.
I think that would show on the other side of that development.
On the other side.
From how that roadway relates.
Anything else I can do for you, council members? Okay.
Good evening, Council. Brandy Walker with Civil Science, representing the applicant tonight. I think Mr. Ellerman did a great job of explaining it. The access to the lake around the homes would be private. The intent is to not have the community where these homes back the lake having access to the lake. The road is the ARC Village 4, that little pop-in, will be developed as residences as well. But as you can see over where the circle, the temporary cul-de-sac kind of looks like, that's the gap right there where an open space connection does come to the lake. So that would be the portion that we'd really only want pedestrians or people to even be accessible to the lake. Carl's not opposed to providing an emergency access. However, we feel by putting in a 20-foot wide pathway, so to speak, maybe it's gated, I don't know, but does kind of promote people to get back in these private yards. These houses will be pretty right up to the back of the lake. The lake has a dual purpose where it's serving as a lake, but also as a detention basin. It's a big detention basin. So there will be some like freeboard on it, and it's the design of it doesn't, around the homes at Border Lakeside, isn't really conducive to a trail or access to it.
Are
Yeah,
there,
that's one of the problems that I have, because we use these PUDs and PCDs using this open space amenities to allow you to get densities. So our community gets something out of it. With this, all you've got is private property owners gaining a lake. And our community gets nothing out of it, yet we've given up densities for that, and I have a little problem with that.
Understand. So the community will be able to see the lake and use the lake, just not in the backyards of these homes. So they can access the lake in between the break.
So you can walk down one at a time down the break to the lake.
Where they can like take their, I believe, paddle boards and that kind of stuff and use the lake. But there won't be like a trail system that's in these people's backyards.
Do we have an issue that arises by the use of that lake with people saying that's my backyard?
I don't believe so. It's common it's very visible to the community by having the large edge of it, where Drew pointed out the master plan road. That's a large, that arc, and both sides right there will be exposed and opened.
Would you point that out? Or
the Southern Parkway now, we're at 90s off the Warner Valley into the Fields Road. That's that road. If you'd got off the Warner and kept going straight, that's that same road. So it's a fairly large road. The lake across the street is another detention basin, and we're looking in design aspects of having them try to connect. So you could,
See, and I look at that as not being conducive at all to people using that. I mean, you're on a busy highway, basically.
well, the access would come off of a less, sorry. So the trail system actually connects and touches the
trail
lake.
system up there, I don't have a problem with. It's more, I guess I've always envisioned those lakes, and it's been portrayed to us at different times of having a trail around the lakes. We've talked about fishing being available in those
Yeah.
lakes. Some of those things that the community could access and be a part of and participate in down there. And all of a sudden now I see that being shut off.
Well, the fishing is, Carl's got that in his plan, but like I said, the accessible points to it aren't adjacent to
guess-
this development.
Yeah, it says you can fish, but you can't get there. That's what I'm saying. Fishing might be a part of it, you can't get there.
Well, I agree with Councilman Belliston. If you've ever seen a boy with a fishing pole, see how long he stays on the beach. The kid will go all the way around there. So if we don't address that, either it's all the way shut off or we make it accessible. It's kind of both for the safety and the feel and fit of the community. I don't see why we
That's
don't
my
address that
feeling,
now.
is it needs to have some buffer space there. It needs to have a trail system, something to access around
It seems like a proper jaunt. I know where the trail system's being proposed and talked about, but this seems like a nice little walk around the lake. You're talking about the most values of the aesthetics, and I really agree with Councilman. We're
Could-
really missing out on this.
If it's a detention basin, how much
Yes.
side do you have? How much
That's,
is water?
that's the, Councilman Bellison's kind of going where the thing is. This is a dual purpose thing. Rather than have a big ugly, like you see them all over, big open, basins with rock, this one we're putting water in. But this is a major detention basin for the city. So there will be sides of that. You're not going to be at water's edge. So it's not really a safe thing necessarily to have kids running around that edge of the lake if it's not designed to have pedestrians standing on it, because it is serving as a detention basin. So in a big event, that thing will fill up with water. There's going to be,
So then I have a problem with it, because if you're building something and you're planning it with fish, but then you're gonna have edges of it that are not safe,
Doesn't make
I've got a
sense.
problem with that.
Believe that, we do that with our Sullivan Park. It's built the same way. It floods up, floods over. We've got a concrete pad around it. Does the
yeah,
same
it floods
purpose.
over into the river though. This
Correct.
would be in
Well,
people's
you've gotta
backyards.
relieve this somewhere.
Yeah.
When this one floods over, it goes somewhere. You've got to have a relief on it.
It's got a large storm drain outfall. So
So,
the factor would be,
functions the same way, and that's what I'm saying. I don't see a reason why we can't provide access around there of some type around for the citizens to be accessing. I mean, that's what it's always been portrayed as part of the PCD. As I
our master
stated
plan
before.
trail system respectfully has never shown trails around the lakes, the detention basins.
Well, I know it's been told to us by the developer that, hey, these lakes are gonna have it where people can walk around them, they can fish in them. I just don't see that access being, like you say, everybody's got a private lake in their backyard. That's what you've got, is lots that are marketed as private lakes.
This doesn't reflect the grading.
It doesn't. Carl's opted to expand the lake and make it larger so you can,
No, what I'm,
that's existing ground contouring.
exactly, what I'm saying is, if you show the grading, the profile, and the water line of what the lakes are, and then what the detention basin portion is, that'll give us a clear indication of how much free space all the way around those areas are. And maybe that'll paint a clearer picture along with, the overall PCD map
Well, I
that
think
shows
that
how
free
it all
space
ties
needs to
back
be
in.
noted as open space, so you don't have those homeowners fencing it off, locking it off.
Exactly.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but yeah, you're right. It's open space to the detention basin area that,
Well,
Majority of the time is dry and walkable and open and usable.
I know that we've talked about having access all the way around it, but not for everyone's access around it. But I gotta get on a powder board, something happens, right? Do we want to have any type of thing that inhibits people from trying to address an emergency concern or anything like that? I mean, it just makes most sense to not have anything that blocks the whole in that walk around next to the buildings.
Carl's not opposed to putting emergency access in.
I mean, so are you gonna secure it and lock it off when there's not an emergency going into there? I mean, or are you just gonna say,
think
please
that-
don't come in here?
Comes down to a safety thing. Is it safe to enter the lake at that particular location versus where we're providing a beach access where they can walk into it?
And I would require that the lake, if you're gonna plant fish in it and you're gonna encourage access on one side, the lake has to be safe enough to have people on it and around it. Because once they get down to the lake edge, how are you gonna stop them from crossing over? Even if you don't put an access in there, how are you gonna stop some kid from crossing over and getting into an area where it's, you're using that idea as safety, but sorry, if it's not designed to be having people safely around it in the middle of a residential neighborhood with fish planted in it, then that's a big problem.
So what I think I'm hearing is that parts of that are steep and therefore not so safe. And then there's parts where you've created beach access.
Well, the drainage manual doesn't let us grade over a 3-to-1. So it's going to be a 3-to-1 at the steepest that we can do
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Now, in conjunction with this, what I'm interested in is, I know that this is being proposed with Village 3, correct? The lake right now? So, yeah, and I'm just double checking here. And so, is it saying that this amenity will be put in with Village 3, or is this something that will be put in later with Village 4, or is this with Village 21? At what point does the amenity of the lake come into play?
I think, and Carl might have to correct me on this, I want to misspeak. But as far as engineering goes, we could stage it in. So the need for the lake, this lake is actually, the detention need is for the property way further to the south.
Right.
So Village 3 actually, all the drainage goes to the north. It doesn't actually end up in this
So
lake.
this is being proposed as something to be talked about on Village 3, but won't be going in with Village 3.
Maybe theoretically, I don't know how Carl's marketing it. That's the thing. Does Village 3 need this lake? No, from an
Because it's just
engineering
a unique thing
standpoint.
is because it is brought into us to discuss right now, but I'm getting the impression that this isn't even something that would be going in with Village 3. It seems like it's just, I really don't know.
The only part that would have to be is if there's any infrastructure that we're gonna require along that lake as part of Village 3, we need to discuss it.
So if it is being discussed right now, is the intent to install that at this time as well, is to put this amenity in?
Carl addressed that.
Carl Larson, the developer of Stuckey Farms. If you, and I know that it's hard to do, but we're trying to get preliminary plat for the whole thing, all of Village 3 right now. But the first phase of Village 3 is actually only 9 lots, which is further, it's the first 9 lots as you come in and goes around the open space area. And the reason for that is so that we can do all of our planning and all of our engineering and everything for the lake to make sure that it is safe, make sure that we've got the area that we need, and we have expanded it a little bit, but there will be space for people to access the lake and everything. As it is right now, it's just a concept plan that really doesn't show everything that we need to do. We've had Civil Science do a whole booklet on lakeside and frontage area and everything. And that's one of our biggest concerns is safety. So we'd like to bench things and do some things to make the whole lake safe all the way around. And that's one of the reasons that we expanded the lake in size, is because that way we can develop safe areas and different things. But right now, we are not going to be doing the lake until we get, quite frankly, I've got to still work with the city to do some planning when it comes to using the lake for not only detention, but we're using it to irrigate from. So there's still a lot of planning to go in, and that's why we're doing the first 9 lots to the north and to the east of that area. We're not doing any lots on the lake immediately in the first phase.
So I'm trying to follow your comment. You're trying to do the first 9 lots in Village 3. Is that to fund the design of the lake, or I guess I'm not following what you're.
Do you want me to kind of show you? Or?
Well, I'm not following the logic of what you're saying. Brandy pointed out the first 9 lots. I'm not seeing the correlation between what you're seemingly trying to make a point, but I don't get what you're.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to build the road back to it and everything, because the road right now doesn't even come back.
You're going to build
as
the
far
first
as that.
9 lots in order to get the road put in. And
Yes.
And do that work. To do that. And what so again, the correlation between the road and the lake. Help me with that.
The road will come around on Stookie Farms Parkway, and it will come up to the area where you've got the area into Lakeside. Yes, where the arrow is. And then all of the rest of it will have to have designed with the lake for safety's sake and everything. Safety is one of the biggest things in my mind, to be honest.
I wonder if it would be useful to have your 2 different preliminary plats, one that, gets you started in the area that's not the lake, and another for the council that would give them more detail about the lake and what's going to happen around the lake and how it's going to happen.
Yeah, that was kind of my feeling, Councilwoman, that if we want to move forward, we look at just phase 1 of this preliminary plat, which would be the lot 9 through 7, basically, or 8. So it's the first 9 lots, which would allow them then to start that process. Because I don't think the whole thing sounds like, to me, he's even admitted that it's not ready to go forward. This
Well,
point has a whole project.
They've got it hash marked around those lots. If you look at it, they've identified them.
The phasing you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
they've identified.
That's
that
what I'm
phasing.
saying. So we could look, if we wanted to move forward tonight, that's all we would move forward on, is those first 9 lots, not the whole plat.
So help me out. Where's that phasing at?
If you blow it up, you can see a dark line around those 9 lots.
What are the numbers on those lots?
1 through 5, 20 through 22, and lot 9.
Now, in doing so, that would give them enough time to address the needs within engineering, the lake, and everything else.
Well, I think some direction from the council would help too with that around the lake. My opinion is that we give some direction, that they give access around that lake there and the rest of the design process.
Mayor, if I
could.
Yes.
So just from a grant management, it's related, but it's also a separate issue. So as I understood it, Randy, at least what you present is that, so lot 11 through, all the way on that side of the lake where you said that there would be access, would be a trail. But only those lots would have access to the lake at that point, goes it back onto it?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
So to me then, don't those need to be, because those don't show as being ownership of those lots back there, but in effect, limited common area, isn't it?
To be honest,
Well, it's outside of our subdivision boundary.
right.
Where this,
So then they don't necessarily any more access than anybody else, than anybody else in the project has. Even though they back onto their lot, they don't have a limited common ownership for the portion up to the lake, any more than anybody else would.
not with this lakeside plat, because we haven't addressed that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't sound to me like it's ready to go forward.
I think it would be helpful if you had a flow line with the lake, or a flow line of the detention.
Cross sections at the back end of the lot.
Show what, what room and what sizing you have there, because, and how that grading is going to relate.
Well, I think this is good discussion, because in getting you guys' feedback,
Well,
If-
you're already showing, what, 15 or 20 feet
Yeah, those are existing contours as they've kind of been, as it's sitting out there
Well, no,
today.
no, behind the lots, where
Yeah.
that blue line is behind the lots, there's.
Well, that's an arbitrary, just showing the lake's there. Yeah. Just to depict that that's the lake.
Just, I think the encouragement too is a little like people that live along the ocean. Those of us that want to walk along the ocean side are probably uncomfortable with private homes that have drawn lines clear down to the ocean and forbid anybody to go along what most people would like to assume is a free and open area. And my guess is if you try to restrict access around the rest of the lake, that will be a problem.
It almost feels like it has to be one or the other.
Also don't have access to it either, even though, so I want to make sure we don't also have people that own lots, open, and someone come in later to the council saying, we can't even go down the lake, we get to see it, we can't even pull out our walls to go into it, we don't even have access, we just have a better view.
I really feel like, how we've talked about it, it's either an all or nothing approach. And since we have an intent to bring the community into it, I think it's a safer approach in the overall run because it will draw attention, especially the people that we're most concerned about a safety issue. And since we're opening up to the community, I think it just needs to be addressed as a community access. And however we can make that work, I think it makes the most sense. So,
But for now, I think
For now,
it
we
would
can
be
step away
helpful
from
to,
it.
yeah, get your project started.
but that's just some
Um,
feeling we have as a
Get your
council.
nine lots going and give you time to work with the council. And
And,
the rest
and
of
that's
it.
exactly what I planned on doing. Because, there's no other way to do it. In fact, I'm visiting with Mike, because we also have to do, part of this is the big part of the lakes is using the water to irrigate with.
Right.
And so we will have to have
Gotta
the
work through that
freeboard,
too. Yeah.
and we will have to, the lakes that are already excavated out there are not how I want to do it. Because they, to me, are too steep for safety's sake. So we've got to have a place to start, and this is a place to start.
Ready for a motion, Mayor?
Well, just one other question before your motion. So I guess I wasn't aware that we were going to try and have this lake be three purposes. So you're going to irrigate with it, you're going to use it for flood control, and you're going to use it for recreation. Are we requiring any engineering to make sure that those are all kind of, some of those are competing purposes.
It will all be engineered for all of those purposes.
Or Sullivan Pond does the same thing down there. We irrigate out of it, flood control it. So it's a very similar process. to
Well, I
Sullivan
mean,
Pond.
as long as you engineer it for it,
Correct,
you know what your limits
absolutely.
are, because that's an easy,
Now,
that would be very easy to miss
Mhm.
and to not get right, and to
Yeah.
hit all three of those markers.
I agree.
And we've had preliminary work done on that, but we're not to the point that we want to fully commit to it, because I've still got to work with the city on the engineering for the irrigation, because we have to have flow between the lakes also. We've got to make sure that the
But we
water's
don't really
moving.
have any kind of a requirement, the city doesn't usually have lakes built in. We don't have any kind of requirement for seeing that engineering done with the three purposes. Or at what time that gets done.
Public Works would require it.
Public
Yeah.
Works would
Construction
require it
documents.
on the irrigation portion, but, and the debris, well, I guess the debris. Yeah, okay,
You ready for my motion?
thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve phase 1 of the preliminary plat for Lakeside at Stuckey Farms, located approximately Stuckey Farms Parkway and south of the crossroads at Stuckey Farms, which consists of lots 1 through 5, lot 9, and lots 20 through 22.
Second?
A motion and a second.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Item 8, ordinances. Consideration to approve an ordinance for general plan amendment G-19-04 to change the current land use designation from open space to CCOM Community Commercial, located approximately 3650 South, 1500 East, applicant Robert Steffs.
Drew, while you're doing that, the ordinance says to change from open space to community commercial, but it's already at neighborhood commercial for the general plan.
Part of it is. So let me bring that. The red part is already neighborhood commercial. And then the blue is detention pond. The black is open space. They want the whole, all this colored area to become community commercial. Right now it's neighborhood commercial on that east end is what it is. Does that help? Okay. Just for the council, the 2-week holdover is completed. This item is ready for your action. Just to remind you, the Planning Commission reviewed the request at their October 16th meeting. The Planning Commission, by a vote of 4-1, recommended approval of G-1904 to amend the general plan land use map from the neighborhood commercial pond designation and open space to the community commercial designation. I'm glad to answer any questions you might have had in your 2 weeks that I can help you with, or I can just slide off to the side.
One of my questions about this is, can we just see it from an aerial perspective again?
Yes.
With how
Again, it looks like the land of desolation, but I'll be glad to get that for you here.
Well, you're looking at that. If we don't have a detention pond there and felt like we needed one, where are we going to be our detentioning?
The pond is sufficient. It was over designated, and it's gone through again. This has Mike, how many is the flood district? There's several entities involved in this thing, so they've gone through and when the people wanted to develop homes on the north side of 3650 up here, then they started looking at all the engineering more directly and realized that part of that blue area was beyond what was needed for that debris basin. So that started this ball moving forward in that direction, if that helps. So there is sufficient there to meet. And the engineers have looked it over, done all the calculations to my understanding, and that's why there's these pieces that they can take out. So.
Within this, the council had a great opportunity to go out and walk, take this area. I know you've all done your due diligence as well. I really like the zoning, how it is in place right now with the neighborhood commercial. I think it's great. I went and talked to the homeowners that live next to it, and it was unique because half of them said, please don't judge me. I don't want to tell you where I came from. Then you immediately say California, then they blush. A lot of great people that have really moved in and enjoy this community. There are some unique concepts happening. Now, if you zoom in on where it has it, I think you're a little bit high. Don't you got to come down a little bit from there?
Well, it's right in the middle of the picture, basically. You can see 3650 kind of up there. That's this road.
Right. Right. And when you go and you stand in that place right now, they're right on the side north of that road. There's already 22 homes. Lots have been sold, and there's roughly 16 homes built. And these are some significant investments where I think that if we jump too quick in changing our zoning in here, it truly doesn't fit with the flow of this community. A lot of the concerns that I have, we have in play right here, is that we have such a huge pressure happening here. This is gearing up to be a new access onto this main corridor. You can see the zonation how it has right now. The red is representative of what again?
Neighborhood commercial.
So this
in
is,
case.
I just want to make sure I don't say this wrong. Our neighborhood commercial, none of the residents had a complaint against the neighborhood commercial. They thought it was wonderful. They planned for it. They looked into that, thought that would be a great thing. They are concerned that the upgrade of the community commercial would significantly alter the concept of their community. I still think the neighborhood commercial is great, and we're going to have a road come through there. And not too far from there, I know off the Staley properties, there's even more commercial already zoned up. Is that correct?
At the interchange of
At the
Washington Fields Road and
interchange.
3650,
Right.
on the Andrus's property, the Staleys, and then the Snows have the
Right.
northwest
And
portion.
when I talk to the residents, I really appreciate this because I think I've heard many different points of view. They're going to be right in between two unique commercial opportunities. And that is zoned as a C2 or a C3 of the Staleys. Is that right now?
Well, it's general
General
planned as
plan.
community, so it could be C2 or 3.
Okay, so that area, we've already planned for significant amounts of commercial within this area. And they brought up some unique points of view, which I really appreciated. They said, look, many people around us have said, we don't mind driving 3 miles away. But when I talked to the community members there, they're like, no, we invested and we knew that there was going to be this type of commercial right next to us. And a couple blocks away, there's this other commercial. And so as I heard it out more and more, I really feel like when we start changing and increasing the concepts and in our commercial or in our density for our residential areas, we're having some huge chain reactions that change things up. And I'm struggling because I really feel like this area needs to be talked about as how it connects. I know this is such a small thing, but like we talk about with our PUDs and everything else, or our plan, just these larger concepts of where commercial homes go in, community homes. The Fields is undergoing so much pressure right now. With the last time we really talked about the zonation, we didn't have schools. We have multiple schools out there now. We have announcement of an LDS temple. And we have this wonderful opportunity as a council to sit out there and say, okay, before we just start going crazy here, we have this awesome study in place. I think we need to slow down and really talk about what we're doing, because everything just seems to change so quickly that it won't benefit either what we're trying to do in our study. And we have so many pressures pushing the citizens there. It's really becoming concerning to me. So this almost feels like a straw that broke the camel's back to me. I feel like we're rushing so quickly just to do it. If I felt like there was like, wow, this makes sense to increase this area because it's going to connect to a larger road, or it's connecting into another commercial or into this community, I would feel more apt to say, well, let's just let it roll. It looks fine. It's within their rights. But my hope is to plead to the council to give us more time, to this upcoming council, to talk about the connectivity of the fields. It is changing so rapidly and so quickly that I would really like to follow some of the recommendations of that planning, to just let the 5 months remain in that planning phase to go through before we start changing the plan as it is. I'm fine letting the development happen within the general plan as it is right now, but don't feel comfortable having zone changes until that particular study has been done. And that's just my feeling.
So I understood we had this a little bit of a conversation earlier, and I understand what your desire with that, right? I think it's a separate conversation in a workshop and a separate motion. This applicant submitted, we're now between the public comment and the actual decision.
Right.
To now say, well, let's talk about a 6-month moratorium on.
Well, fair
zoning.
enough. If you want me to bring it
that's
up on
not-
another time, that's fine, but I felt like talking with the residents there, which we opened up that first thing for.
Maybe so, but.
If
again,
you want to refer just to that
We're
alone
midway
and
between a
isolate it.
public hearing and a decision on it.
I know.
That's a different
So if you want me to,
conversation.
I will zoom back in, but I felt before you felt like I didn't want to come off as a bias. I didn't want it to say, where is your reasoning? You need to know what I'm thinking before I come back and zoom into this. Zooming back into where we're at, I really feel that the residents brought a lot of valid concerns and saying, look, we have nothing wrong with the existing zoning of the neighborhood commercial.
Well,
And I'm fine with that, and I'm fine keeping it. I haven't seen a reason to change it out of the neighborhood commercial and let it stay within the neighborhood commercial.
can I respond to that? During the public hearing, we did have a discussion on things that don't, uses that aren't part of neighborhood commercial, that are part of community commercial. And we had residents saying, oh, I think that'd be great there. So, and unless you do change it to the community commercial, that use can't even go there, right? And so we had people in the public hearing saying, yeah, that works. And it's separated by 3650. It's south. It's you don't have there is no
Right.
common property line between any residence and these properties that are being requested.
And so as a clarification to help me out, and I know it's in a sense a disadvantage to the council, when I went out and talked to people, more people who weren't able to come to the meeting, the overall response was, we love the neighborhood commercial, we're not for the community commercial. It was brought up both
Until we
ways.
started talking about uses of community commercial, and they said, oh, that'd be fine.
Well, you're saying two different things. If I can't say my part, it's the same thing. I'm asking you to not say yours either. I don't want to make this
May
a point of,
I throw in a happy medium?
yeah.
Why don't we look at that PUD commercial?
And see, that's
It
the
achieves
part.
exactly what you're trying to achieve. It achieves the neighborhood's need, because they then have a say in what comes into there. It becomes part of your planning process.
Right.
I think it hits all the points that everybody's bringing up. To me, it's a simple answer to go to PUD.
And
Let's
it
go
is,
down
I
that
would be
path a
fine.
little bit if
We
we
did
can.
create that during that last general plan. Well, we did create that general plan zone.
And if
Correct.
that's where you're feeling, and I appreciate throwing out a medium in there, putting in the PUD, I think would be a great olive leaf resolution for this area, knowing that where I'm feeling as a councilman, we could address that in another issue. If that
Well,
would
you
make you
could,
feel most
you address it
confident.
along the way. Exactly. It becomes
Exactly.
part of your planning process. You address it into that.
So but we're, sorry, I didn't mean to-
Oh, you're fine. I just.
well, I was just gonna follow on your comment there and turn back to staff, because we're in the general plan phase. So
Yes.
What do we need a general plan to do that, and also send like the applicant had a
Well, the applicant sent me, after your discussion and your public hearing 2 weeks ago, they sent me an email, and I was going to bring this into you, is that they've agreed and they're happy with getting a PUD designation. They're fine with that. They're all for that. If that helps the council and has a little bit more comfort to it, they'll take the PUD designation.
Well, and that gives us people an opportunity to see in detail. And
Needs to.
there's been discussion about, well, feathering, what if we, and certainly along some of those roads, some commercial is available that's not going to impact the homes and that nothing else is going to go into those areas. And so I think for the community and the council to be able to see a little more detail about that would suggest, which I tend to agree with, that some.
Yeah, because they won't get as much detail even if you keep it neighborhood commercial. In certain cases, they wouldn't see as much detail, where the PUD, you're going to see the whole project.
I really feel that just as a respect to the community and the concepts which we're trying to achieve in the larger vision, coming back down to this very microscopic, there is a lot of conversation that needs to be brought into these connecting parts. And I do appreciate
I don't disagree with you. I just, my mind is, that's a workshop and a separate council decision, then to essentially inject that into a specific applicant.
And I really appreciate you hearing out my concerns, because I just wanted to not come off as being either, this could be misconstrued. I just feel a lot of pressure as a council member to really step back, and I think there's a lot of opportunities afforded us through these studies. I do appreciate the resolution which you proposed in the concept. I would feel better with the PUD in this, to respect that this is what this issue is. And knowing that, it gives us the opportunity as a council to add a lot of voice to this, how it connects and everything. But also, we will continue on the concept later on to open this up and talk how we'll move this forward. So I do appreciate you hearing me out. I like the concepts.
It would seem even in the future with additional commercial property in that general area, that same thing would be a shame to have duplicate kinds of projects going into those areas, whereas it really could be valuable to the community and not
Exactly.
necessarily.
And Councilman, to your point, I just had a thought that PUD would allow you still to integrate those design guidelines into that PUD design, if that
Exactly. And
helps.
so that's the part. If we go into the PUD, as we have the study, we can infuse those things into it as the study does its thing. So a PUD does meet what I would like, and it does respect what's being proposed on this issue.
So can we drill into that just a little bit? So the design guidelines will come after the general plan designation of the PUD zoning, correct?
Yeah, because you're going to vote
But
on
you
it
still-
tonight,
you
up or
still-
down. And
right.
so that's what would happen, is it would have a general plan designation of PUD.
So I guess
Now-
my question, yeah, go ahead.
I think I'm going to follow you. If they come in like next week with the PUD plan, you could say, you know what? We appreciate that, but we have our design guidelines coming. We don't want to look at this just allows them to get that property into usable space.
Yeah.
Because right now, part of it, the blue and the green area, they can't do anything with.
Well,
And
and it's A windfall might be a strong term, but to be able to turn all of that retaining pond into usable property, that's a pretty good deal.
Well,
And that goes back to the big vision, right? I'm trying not to pull big vision stuff into this concept right now.
But that was one of the discussions too, with the applicants is gaining access between the parcels together.
Any additional discussion on this? Anybody want to make a motion?
Well, if there's no other discussion on this, I'd like to make a motion, Mayor. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consideration of the ordinance, the general plan amendment G-19-05, to change the current land use designation from open space.
Oh, for
sorry.
Councilman.
Am I
Okay,
read the wrong one here?
the top one, yeah.
Oh,
Item
that's
A.
right. I'm sorry.
No
Sorry,
worries.
thank you. Open space, community commercial. I'm going to just start again. I'm sorry. Consideration to approve the ordinance for general plan amendment G-19-04 to change the current land use designation from open space and as a change to a PUD commercial located approximately 3650 South, 1500 East, with the understanding that as the development of our study goes through, the recommendations from the study could apply to the PUD commercial.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second.
Ward, aye.
Bluff eye.
Granger, aye.
Turek, aye.
All right, it's approved with those modifications. Thank you. Item B, consideration to approve an ordinance for general plan amendment G-19-05 to change the current land use designation from open space to CCOM commercial, community commercial, located approximately 3650 South, 1300 East. Applicant Doug Dennett.
Just for the council, again, 2-week period is over. This is the property that borders on the west boundary of the one you just did. And so I think this applicant has also agreed that they would take a PUD over that as well from the council if that helps them in this particular piece. And again, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Well, if there's not a lot of consideration, it's basically the same concept. Mayor, my motion is to approve the ordinance for the general plan G-19-05 to change the current land use designation from open space to PUD commercial located approximately 3650 South, 1300 East, under the understanding that as the study goes through, we can apply the recommendations of the study, the concepts to the design standards within that PUD commercial.
Motion is,
Before,
go ahead.
a matter of discussion on that, can you, Drew, would you mind pulling up the current zoning? You had that up before.
That's the general.
Yeah, current general plan zone, excuse me, current general plan is what I meant, yes.
I think it's all open space.
It's more, I think it has a little bit of green to it.
Because it does border the road a bit, but it's mostly out of the pond. And it's pretty close to where you can see that road that kind of dips, that service road into the
So, but
substation.
you're saying that most of that is out of the pond? Because the document that we received in the packet only shows a fairly small little portion of that that's coming out of the
If you
pond.
look at the map, the majority of it's out of it.
This,
Well, no, I need to explain the blue in this particular picture is not the same blue associated in the general. This is the floodplain area that they have to address and get that out. So I see where I knew exactly what you were getting to. This blue is floodplain, where the other blue is a general plan bubble of detention area. Does that help clarify that for you?
If I recall right, weren't they responsible for the Mylar change?
Yes, that's the conditions on this, that they have to turn those in before we'll ever let them. Again, they would have to turn in a Lomar or a Clomar, whatever works best for them. Letter of map revision, it would be a Lomar, I think 95% sure Lomar to get the blue out of that particular hashed area. And they're already working on those.
sorry, one more time back to the general plan zoning. So this property comes in. we do have 3650 separating that and the existing home, because
Yeah,
there's
and you-
homes there now, right? But that doesn't
To
show it
the
on this
north,
current
there
overlay.
is.
Yeah, you can actually see right here. And you can kind of see the road faintly over here.
And see, just as a point of discussion, one of the most frustrating things I've had with our general plan is what we call open space is not how everyone else seems open space. You know, we say open space, but we also say not yet zoned. And that's where I'm just begging, man, there's so many things where we just got to clear up the language and the concepts of these areas. And it's very frustrating for homeowners to come in and say, well, I'm building right next to open space. Now there's this coming in. And well, we've heard about a park, but we can put in some commercial. It frustrates me.
Frustrates us too, which is.
Well, and it's
that's why
something that we can
changed the open
address.
Space to not yet zone, where it's private property. We changed that designation.
As many as we could
As many,
think that we're going to be.
Exactly, but that comes back to, there's some that I don't feel like have been clarified enough, so it's struggle for me.
But in this case, where information came about the detention pond, thinking it was needed for that, and then finding it isn't,
Right.
it's only fair to those property owners to give them a usable designation. Where before, if it was needed for that, it's understandable, they understand that. But when you come and find out that those boundaries don't need to go there, then there's, we don't want to keep people from, it's just hard to, would do that to somebody who has a piece then it can be usable for something.
There's that concept of doing that to somebody and how it connects to the community. And I feel like so often we focus on to do that to somebody rather than the community connection. And I just don't feel like it really respects that most times. So I'm really hoping that we can gain something out of our study that lets us really truly say this is what we're planning on doing, not just until the next meeting something else will change in a different plan. And it's really frustrating for me as a council to have any type of accountability to a general plan.
200 plus years of frustration that
I
across
know
the United
it's not
States.
resolved, but, you know, the
Yeah,
difference
I know.
between the 200 years of
I
frustration
agree
is
with.
an active study.
Yeah.
You know, having an active study in play is
Yeah.
completely different than what we've had as the normal. And I want to see something different than normal.
The key is in the word general as opposed to the specific plan. And in general has more latitude. It's got more movement.
3650, remind me what road designation that is, what size?
85-foot
Major
road.
arterial?
It's a major road.
Those were my questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. I did have a motion and a second. Who seconded? Councilman Bellison seconded it.
Ward, aye.
Left eye.
Granger, aye.
Dallas, aye.
Turek, aye.
All right, thank you. That is approved also. We'll move on to our public hearings, item 9. Public hearing for zone change request Z-19-16, a request to change the current existing downtown mixed-use DM zoning designation to planned unit development, commercial PUD-C, located at 455 West Vincent Lane, applicant Dove Center, Lindsay Boyer.
Well, Mayor, I'm going to start out with this particular exhibit, but then I'll go to the aerial. It's a lot easier to look at and see. So this is the exhibit turned in. I just want to move into. Sometimes I go too fast. I lose where I'm at. Okay, it's the Red Roof property. No access on Telegraph, enters from Vincent Lane in the back, just for your reference. The applicant is requesting approval to change the zoning of approximately 0.54 acres. The requested change is from the current zoning of downtown mixed use to the proposed plan unit development commercial. The PUD commercial request is for the purpose of seeking a solution to a proposed problem that they have. It's not a proposed problem, it is a problem, and this is what staff is recommending to solve that. Currently, the parcel is being used by the Dove Center. It's an organization that assists abused women and children. And as a counseling center and temporary dwelling units, told myself I wasn't going to get emotionally in, but this is the things that do touch me. Needed for mothers and children until more permanent residents can be found. The Dove Center wishes to expand the number of dwelling units and downsize the office space used in the current layout of the building. The wish to remodel the lower main floor area into 2 more dwelling units. All current zoning districts within the city do not allow for dwelling units on the ground floor in addition to office space utilization on that same ground floor. So in other words, what I'm telling you is any of my zones we allow for residential mixed with commercial, but it's got to be on the upper floors. So I don't have anything. So that's why we've decided to try for the PUDC and go upon the council's hope that they can see that for an alternative to use that PUDC to accomplish what we have. The applicant staff are wishing to use this district, seeking commission and council approval allow this mixed use in this manner to accomplish this and an alternative problem that exists. Staff feels confident that this zoning use could be a solution in meeting the unique circumstances that face the Dove Center's request and needs at the present time. Due to the organization's use and structure, staff does not feel that this would be a detriment to the surrounding properties. The general plan use designation of this location is historic downtown designation. The HD designation allows for zoning districts of downtown mixed use, but the special circumstances, staff feels that the PUDC is the proper option at this time. The surrounding zoning of the parcel is R3 to the north, R18 to the south, and C2 on each side to the east and the west. Staff has reviewed the requested zone change, finds it meets the intent of the general plan and the intent of the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their November 20th meeting, and they unanimously recommended approval. It was the 1916 to the zone change request. And that's on to you, the city council. Sorry, I apologize.
I have a feeling you've been over and visited.
Well,
great
I
the
also
need is
have
for that.
family that's been through this kind of circumstance. And these places are very needed.
We can't accomplish this just through conditional use.
No,
Okay.
no, I looked through and scoured the book. I tried to find, and I'm good at finding loopholes in anybody's city ordinance, especially my own. And there was none. The only option was, and there really wasn't any other one. And then this came to me and just said, that's what PUDs are for. I've always, my 24 years of profession considered PUDs as negotiating zoning. And it can be used as such and should be for certain circumstances, especially. And I think this one fits that.
When we started this, it was kind of headed down the road of a general plan change and then zone change and, potentially upwards of a year-long process. And so I appreciate you, Drew, for doing that and helping work through to find a solution that allows the Dove Center to reach out and help more people.
Yeah, these are certainly people who need this solution. They need more solutions perhaps than we even offer as a community, but they certainly need this one.
And I looked at the parking. I'm not worried. In fact, there'll probably be less parking because of, a single mother with her kids would only have one, where if I have office staff and I have 4 offices down there, or 5 offices, you can see that the parking should be a wash, or actually maybe even less. And I like the seclusion of this, a perfect property for this. So.
Any additional questions for Drew before I open the public hearing? Okay, thank you very much, Drew. Folks, this is a public hearing. Any of you that have a desire to speak about this, we would appreciate it. If not, I'll entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Motion and second.
Granger, aye.
Ward, aye.
All right, item B, consideration to approve this ordinance for zone change request Z-19-16. The request to change the current existing downtown mixed-use DM zoning designated to planned unit development commercial PUDC located at 455 West Vincent Lane. I believe it was felt that we should, at the request, I believe, of Dove Center, they'd like to move this forward, get a decision as soon as possible.
I think it only makes sense when this council hears it, there'll be a new council turnover before the 2 weeks was up. And so then you're starting with another totally different council. So I think it would be appropriate. This is not substantial, obviously. We didn't have anybody speak to it. So I don't think it's a great concern to the community. And I don't think there'd be much more come in over the 2 weeks that would change.
Or not exactly highly controversial either.
Yeah, exactly. Well put, Councilman.
Well, with that in mind also, to not steal the concept and the push that the previous councils put on this, I'd love to make a motion on this, but prefer that a passing council member make a motion related to this item.
Well, I'd be happy to make a motion to this item. I appreciate all the Dove Center does. Thank you. I appreciate the ability to be involved. Thanks, Drew. Make a motion that we approve an ordinance for zone change request Z-19-16, a request to change the current existing downtown mixed-use zoning designation to PUDC, located at 455 West Vincent Lane.
I'd like to second that.
Ford, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellis denied.
Turek, aye.
That's approved.
Yes. We did talk about an intermission.
It was my privilege to be there when we cut that ribbon. Remember that? Yeah. So
Yeah,
we'll
I would-
take a break and
That
come
would
take
be
a
great.
picture of us, will you? Maura, you could take one, throw it on Facebook. You want us to drive up to the Dove Center and
Well, let's have an intermission, huh?
Are we centered here? Sure you got enough? Who are we looking at? Thank you.
Personally,
Thank you, guys.
what are my feelings if you didn't wait for a problem to come visit us? We had to come in and just tell us what's going on because you're good neighbors.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
okay, move on to item C. Public hearing for zone change request of Z-19-13, a request for adding the overlay zoning of extraction to the current / existing agricultural 20-acre minimum zoning designation. The overlay request is on roughly 7 acres located approximately 273 east, just north of South Nichols Peak Road. Applicant Larry Adams and Joseph Young.
Thank you, Mayor. The applicant, as stated, is requesting approval of an extraction overlay zone designation to the currently zoned Ag 20 zone property. Just so you know, overlay zones are applied over the top of an existing zone. They have special conditions or approvals that you can do under just that specific overlay zone. The area requested is approximately 7 acres. in size and located, again, as the mayor stated, approximately at 273 East South Nichols Peak Road. Proposed change is for the purpose of having the availability to excavate and remove material from the development site at the address area stated above.
What
This
kind of
material,
Material.
pardon me?
What kind of material?
It's rocks. It's basically boulder rocks to make retaining walls that, you know, you see so lovingly all over our area, the natural stone retaining walls.
Those walls that we discussed. not long ago.
Yeah. Some people love and some people love to hate, I guess is so. So that's what this is asking. The materials being removed to other sites in the not even maybe in our city, but just throughout the area here in St. George, Washington, etc. The item was tabled at the Planning Commission meeting of October 16th with the commissioners wishing to visit the site before they made a decision on the recommendation to go forward onto you, the City Council. The commissioners did visit the site on Tuesday, October 29th, accompanied by 2 members of the Hillside Committee. That's all we could get that day to be there, and they showed up. The Planning Commission then resumed their discussion on this item at their next regular scheduled meeting on November 6th. The Planning Commission, after visiting the site and taking care of their concerns, recommended approval of Z-19-13 for a zone change request of adding the extraction overlay zone to the currently existing Ag 20 zone property owned by Mr. Adams. And this is on to you, the City Council, with the findings and conditions. A lot of these conditions are part of the extraction overlay zone. And so I'll just go specifically the ones that aren't. The time limit, item number or condition number 6, the Planning Commission in their recommendation was to have a time limit of 12 months, and then additional 15 calendar days may be applied or granted by staff due to weather or other related delays and downtime. The finished grades will be as you see in your exhibits. Mostly what the Planning Commission wanted to see. They were really concerned about the one area that's basically right here due east of that particular home there. It would have ended up being one big sheer drop. They wanted to have it stepped. They wanted to have 3 steps, but when the engineering went in, Rosenberg went in, there was just too much broken rock already to pull off 3, but they feel confident in doing a step like this in that particular area. So it'll be about a half and half, a little over half from the bottom to that middle one. But then the other area farther down to the south, we'll be able to have this particular type of a slope there. So that's,
There's some steep slopes, obviously, at 90 degrees that are coming down.
there are some steep slopes. The
So-
one would have been roughly, I think, what would have been the full grade, Jason, 70 plus feet, the biggest one, but now it's like a 40 and a 30.
So what's
So-
the likely deterioration of those sharp cuts?
I'm going to let the engineer to speak to that because I don't want to get into, being all rock, but I'll invite Jason Smith with Rosenberg, who's the engineer on the project. I'll just finish up and then we can invite him up if that's okay. The Hillside Committee, again, we need to tell everything here. We all know that this situation came about. It's kind of a problem that is inherited that we're trying to fix. I mean, I hope everybody already knows that. They went in, started cutting on the hill,
That's been
not
my
knowing.
my
I know,
challenge
but I
on
want that to be brought up so everybody, why we're at this point of fixing this like it is. I'm sure
Right.
everybody has seen the situation. We
I'm
went up
very
and put a
concerned about
stop
it.
work on it, and then we came back to get Hillside involved, and then this was the option. So with Hillside involved, they wanted to see these cuts, and this Planning Commission was the same way. And then the Hillside group wanted all these trees planted at the bottom that you see. That is part of their recommendation. And they also have a recommendation to face the bottom cut down, from the lowest grade up to the first one. That'll be all faced with rock that'll be laid. It's not stacked per se, a retaining wall, but it just has a rock finish on it that is just piled from the top and it rolls down just to give up for vegetation on that lower one.
I don't see
To
in those
keep it.
conditions the need for watering to keep the dust down from anybody that's in the area.
We do have that in my condition number. Should have been one that talked about the,
The site shall be maintained.
it's
in
number
dust-free
5.
condition.
Yeah, access and haulage roads on the site should be maintained in dust-free condition.
Do they need 12 months? When
Well,
they
I
did-
didn't
when
know.
did all
They
that
just-
Stuff up in Green Springs, we only gave them 180 days.
I know. But again, the hillside people and the planning commissioners, mostly planning commissioners talked about this, felt that was their appropriate. Again, you're the council, you can determine, I'd ask the applicant what they feel is legitimate and what's needed. That was just what the planning commission, that was way more than what I did. I was a little bit more harsh, I guess, because I don't deal with this and haul rocks off. I gave them 45 days. And after I started thinking about it, I thought, yeah, it probably is, kind of tight, because we don't want them running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So planning commission felt 12 months was more than sufficient to get the time.
When they went, they went and started tearing up the hillside, and the fix is to approve them to go tear up the hillside. Right?
Right.
I struggle with that. But when they had 4 tracos going to town, and they got plenty of equipment to make it happen. I just want to limit the use on the public streets. I don't want those big trucks running any longer than we need to. If they want to come back to council after 6 months and get an
Extension and show
that's fine.
justification for it. Yeah.
But a year is too long for me.
Another thing with me, I just like to voice in on this is I really struggle with allowing this overlay at all. I think what happened up by the D in St. George, where my goodness, you give a guy 24 hours and what you can do, you can't repair. And that we have our
and it's been
hillside
done in
ordinances.
this
I know,
instance.
and we have our hillside ordinances for a reason. And I think that's a very clear analog for us to look at and go, wow, we could have that. I mean, even if it was done proper and to fix, I think to do any more, I don't see a reason to allow anymore. I'm really struggling with all the conditions and the concepts and stuff. The concept is it shouldn't have started. And I don't see anything fixing to make it better. It's just going to remove material from that to make it worse.
What you get out of this is you get the engineering, rather than just having an open scar, because it's already opened up. You get the opportunity to put conditions on this to make it look better when finally done and comply to the engineering. So if you want to, that's the stink of it, is it's already in, it's already done. So if you can think
It's
of any
not
way to
already
make it
done,
look
though.
better,
That's why I say it
it's
doesn't look
extensively
better.
more.
That's my concern. Will it look better?
And that's my
Sure it
part,
will.
is it will
You
extensively
got a
make
bigger
it worse.
scar now that you-
Right now we have a scar. How do you want a gash? I mean, it just, with engineering, I respect that it's gone and that they've gone through the channels to apply for it, which is different than the first motion that was done. But
That's 70 foot of cut.
it is a very significant expansion of what's already there to fix it. And I don't see a reason to grant that. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. And that's my feelings. I have no reason to allow this to continue. It wouldn't make it better. If they want to fix within a foot from where they've dug stuff, do the engineering, I'm all in. But to expand upon it to fix it, I'm not in.
When we started this process, I said there's 3 options. I mean, there's probably 300, but I think there's 3 quick just options. You stop it and leave it and walk away and say damage is done. Everybody's going to live with what it looks like today. The other thing is put it back. Well, you can't put it back.
You can't put
It's an option, but you can try to put it back. The other one is at least clean it up, get rid of at least all the rubble. That's the one. And again, I don't think anybody's happy about around this. It's happy about it. We know that. I had to talk 2 planning commissioners off the edge, not literally, but I mean figuratively. They were fuming mad about it. Why do we, and I said, this is what we do. This is what cities have to deal with. Problems come about. We have to find the best solution to fix them sometimes. And this is one of those times to find the best solution to make it as best as you can. So I'm not taking anything. I totally know what you're feeling. And again, I get it, but this is part of what we have to do. After doing this for 25 years, every once in a while, these are some of those things that come walking through the door.
I just don't see how granting this overlay is going to truly make it better. I mean, even with what's been proposed, you're just going to have more of a scar. We live in the desert. And yes, we get trees at the base. That's beautiful. That's great. You'll have a scar above that the trees won't cover. I just don't see this as being a mitigation. I don't see a reason to extend it. It just, all it's doing is, in fixing this problem, we want to double the And if we're unsatisfied with what's already happened, we're going to have double what happened to make a solution. And that just seems like we're going the wrong direction. I really struggle with that.
Well, I guess we got a public here. I do have a couple of suggestions on conditions, but I'll hold those for if there's a motion made.
Thank you. Thanks, Drew. Any other additional questions for Drew before I open it up? Okay. Again, a public hearing. Folks, anybody want to come up and make a comment about this?
Sherry Tate. Part of the conversation was having the engineer come up and talk about what's going on. I'm just going to come up and say, can we have an engineer come up and talk about what's going on?
It's a good thing that engineer has you for mouthpiece.
Right? I'm like kicking him in the shin over there.
Thanks, Sherry.
I'm Jason Smith, representing the applicant. So I guess I can speak as a person that sees this, what has happened there every single day. I live there, and I am the engineer. And with all due respect, you're absolutely wrong. If you do not do something there, you're going to have a pile of crap there. That's what you have right now. You have a pile of rubble. You have a bunch of, if you remove it, then at least you have a clean face scar. And I would much rather look at a clean face scar than a bunch of piles of rocks that are scattered throughout whenever that slowly disappear, because that's what they'll do. And you'll have a lot more issues with it if you don't get it taken care of. And that's the only reason I am here. I'm not in favor of it. I wasn't in favor of it from the beginning, but it was already done. So what I am trying to do is to make it look at least respectable of what we have. It's something that has happened. It would have been blasted. There is rubble there. I don't know how you don't fix it without removing the rock. And so that's the reason. The deterioration of the hillside, it's going to last longer than any of us and any of our kids and any of their kids. And I mean, it's a pretty sheer rock that's not a erodible rock. It's a fairly strong rock. If you look, half of that cut was already there for 30 years or more. Everything to the south of where the rock is now, that has been done for at least 30 years, and it would continue to. The cut would look similar to that.
Mr. Young's been chipping away at that hillside for quite a while.
Well, I wouldn't say it's Mr. Young. I'd say it's Mr. Adams. It's his property. Mr. Adams wanted more flat ground and had asked if he would trade the rock for making it flat, and that's what has happened. That was the agreement. And so, from what I understand, like I said, I got involved in this way after.
And I guess the one question I would have, and I don't know how we would even accomplish it, is there a way to remove the rubble without extending the cut?
That's where I'm at.
Well,
I mean, could you go in and clean up the mess? And that's, in my opinion, should be part of the mitigation
but that
process.
is
And
that
look,
is
you
what the
legally started this thing.
To clean it up
Part
within
of
a
your
foot.
punishment is the cleanup.
Great.
well I agree, but the rubble is. I mean, you're not cutting anymore. It's already been cut. It's already been
Basically, what
blasted.
you're saying is all you're going to haul off is the rubble. This thing here hauls off
The
rubble
loose
behind
rock, the
trees.
loose rock is all that you're hauling off. They are not going to extend. I mean, when you
Yeah, they would. The overlay allows that. Am I misreading this?
They'd be cutting that point. It comes
Those
out there,
cuts.
they've already gone
That's where I
through.
disagree with
They're
you.
cutting that out.
no, that's not part of this. That's not part of the
That was pretty clear in the planning commission. They're gonna
that
leave
edge
it-
is not part of. That edge is not part of this. In fact, that is part of the.
Tore up.
Right, and it's not part of this or part of anything that I proposed.
So then we're still gonna have that point that's all.
Because
tore
if
up.
the goal is to look from the north to the south and not see an L shape That's the only portion that you can truly save at this
When they
point.
got shut down, they had 4 track goes on that point that comes out. And that's why they got shut down. That moment they were going to town.
Well,
So that's.
yeah, that's not
appreciate
part.
you letting me know, because that's news to me.
Talks about, at least part of this approval, says no more rock or soil can be removed or disturbed from the northern knob, and that's here.
Okay.
At that point,
Okay.
at least for their application. Now, we may have to go and do something, whoever may be on their, presentation.
As long as this does not allow an expansion is my concern upon what's already happened. If it's truly just cleaning up what is there in the rock that is right there, there's not an argument. But
Is
it's
that what
just,
you see during the simply cleaning up?
That's what I see in the hillside committee, they looked at it again, and you have a great hillside committee, I mean, they're not here, but phenomenal men, they're geotechs, landscape architects, they're almost every city's hillside board, their stuff, and you've seen the worst and the best, and this is one more that they've seen that is false and bad, things that happen before they get their hands on it. But that's my thing, is to keep that level that you already see, level that's already existing for the last 20 years over from this line. And just clean all that out, it's been blown up and made, just like the showing up here. To that tree up to the north, pretty much right there, that's it, and that's that knob that bends around up there, you see on the top. That's that 2710 number on it.
go back to the engineering because I'm having a hard time.
Good.
Because I'm trying to, I'm following the tab. So right there, okay. Do you have an estimation of like the cleanup? What would that entail, either in scope of size? I'm trying to get an idea of where the boundaries are of this.
Well,
The boundaries are very hard to determine from what's drawn here.
It's a big cleanup. You're moving 80,000 yards of material. It's not.
Quite a bit coming out.
Yeah, it's not. It's not a. It's not. Yeah, it's
This is
it's a.
not
It's a.
rubble.
Oh.
How many truckloads define this 80,000 yards? We got what, a 20-yard truck or something like that? How this is a lot of yardage. This is just like
Yeah.
this isn't. You're making it sound like a community cleanup. We'll get the Boy Scouts in a truck and we'll haul it off and it'll look good.
I'm not.
This is significant
I'm not attempting
stuff.
to make it sound like that.
Jeez.
So,
But they will have to get back in there and cut the slopes to the correct angle, correct? Because that's part of the engineering.
Well, yeah, but where it's blasted is that slope has been blasted it's been blasted at that slope. So
So there's no
Yeah.
more blasting.
there will be no
No
more
more cutting.
blasting. There's no more. It has to be loose for them to remove it.
so what,
Is that in the
what
ordinance?
is
Is that in one of the conditions?
transportation of this material, how would that affect the construction of Merrill Road? Because that's their outlet. Right? Mike?
Go down different speeds of road.
Well, if they're hauling 80,000 yards of rock, they got to get it off the hillside somehow. Right now, we got the road tore up.
Well, I'm hoping that the road will be completed because they won't be able to use the road, Merrill Road. So basically, they'd have to use the Nichols Peak Road. Well, I prefer them to use Merrill.
Well, can't they go up through Larry's property and outlet that way?
They could. Well, I'd prefer them to come down and get on Merrill Road when it's complete. It's much safer. The weight would destroy the Nichols Peak Road. It would just destroy that road. Where Merrill Road's being constructed for the weight. Right. Merrill Road's being constructed to carry those kind of weights.
80,000 yards.
They could take it up through Larry's property and outlet to the north.
They
right?
could. None.
When's the construction on Merrill finishing up?
Don't know.
Well, I mean, the reason why I
We
ask
got
is
an-
because I don't want to approve something that they can't haul the material off.
Yeah, we're really getting
Assuming it goes
close.
that road.
Really getting close to paving. Our problem is we've run out of temperatures. So depending on temperatures is when we'll be able to pave the road.
So February, March.
Well, we're hoping that next week we've got a window of above 50 degrees that will start paving next week.
Yeah.
We have to have the infrastructure. We have the energy, we have some material. Or we just look at the
Just leave it laying on the hillside as is.
You know, it'll only take about 4 generations before it goes off anyway. So it's got time to set.
Those lizards, they habitat.
Well, that stuff's broken up. Larry has the use of it on his farm. If he needs it for retaining and whatnot or material, he could use it on his farm. He has in some areas.
Okay, because that was, if you remember, that's what we granted him to do. And I just didn't know if it had happened.
I've seen work done up there. I haven't really talked to Larry, to be honest with you, on this much. Joseph Young has been pushing it, so.
And Joseph Young is the contractor.
He is the contractor that. There was, from my understanding, there was an agreement that Larry wanted some flat property up there. Joseph was doing that as a trade deal of taking the rock. They understood it was agricultural, and so there wasn't any permit necessary.
It was my understanding that he was paying him. He was getting paid to have the rock removed, but there was
He gets
$250,000.
He gets paid by the rock,
delivers to
yeah.
different people.
He's selling
My
the
understanding
rock.
is some of that was going to Larry.
There might have
No,
been
I don't
Maybe I
know.
misunderstood.
I don't
All I knew
know.
was
I
what
don't know
came
that
through.
portion of it, but
All I knew was what came through the planning commission. Maybe I misheard.
And it's getting better, but it's still, I think it's lacks clarity. I'm not for it. Yeah, it can sit 3 generations until we can find a better solution.
I think there's public.
Any other questions for Jason?
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Matt, do you want to come up?
Matthew Ferguson, half owner in the house up to the east of that. Just from seeing what kids do and what they've done up on there with the gate locked and how they get up there, it just seems to me that putting more dangers along that hill or not. You know, the side, the scarring doesn't bother me, but I sure lay awake nights thinking, what in the world are these kids getting up to? And if there's more cliffs for them to fall off, they'll do anything. They do anything the kids do. And anyway, that's my one big concern. The other is the guy who was digging out the rock came to me here, I don't know, 8 months ago and says, hey, we'll give you the same deal that we gave to Larry Adams. We'll give you so much per load to haul off your rock.
Right.
So that's what he said to me anyway. But I don't think we should be putting more dangers up there. But
So you're in
my
favor
opinion.
of not doing this or in favor of doing it?
The scarring doesn't bother me as much as the cliffs. And I might be different on that, but the cliffs sure.
So your
Make
feeling
me
is if we
nervous.
move forward and allow this to happen, it would expose more cliffs or would have
Well,
less?
maybe I'm seeing it wrong, but it's looking like they're going to take that rubble out and leave just the cliff. But
I'm just trying to clarify your concern. I appreciate you.
yeah.
Why? Yeah. Trying to think through that. I mean, just naturally in the area, we have a lot more dangerous cliffs around.
You made reference to things that have happened in there. Is there anything that would better enlighten the council of what is happening with those kids or kids around in your area there that you're concerned about?
Well, the main thing they like to do is to longboard down the road. And, but they go up there and they'll get on the house and it's, you know, fairly dangerous. And they'll, you know, spray paint and just things like that. But how they get up there, I'm not sure. There's not really a safe way if the gate's locked, but from some of the places where they've spray painted, they're pretty gutsy guys. So, I mean, they're kids. We might have done that when we were kids.
Well, I appreciate you clarifying because you live there, and I appreciate residents speaking up about concerns where they're at. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions for Matt or comments? Thank you.
Sherry Tate. So I can tell you how they're getting up there because we own the other side of the hill, the front part of that. And so I know that they access up there. But here's a couple of things. And I don't know Mr. Ferguson. I mean, I know his face now. I don't know who is building that house. But as you guys are talking about hillsides and caring about our hillsides, when I saw that remodel of that house, I was like a little overwhelmed with that. So I'm going to say that kind of, not that it's an eyesore because it's pretty, but it's kind of a lot more there than the house that existed before it. And the other thing, as I look at this and I see where this, and I know where it's been happening because we live right there, to me, that's all in Larry's basically backyard, and nobody dares go in Larry's backyard. So I'm not worried about kids climbing off the cliff because they'll probably be shot at or something. I love Larry, but we've all lived there by him. So that's not a huge concern. But taking the rock out through the farm might be a concern.
Yeah.
Not that I care that my house is dusty because it already is from the farm. But that road is, especially if Sullivan homes start going in right away, you got those big trucks coming off. So, you know, there's a lot of concerns on how it would go. But I do think it needs to be cleaned up. I don't see it as a huge eyesore, but maybe because it's right there with all Larry's stuff and all that new white fencing and all that stuff he's been doing, getting creative. So I don't know. I think it'd be better to move it, but figure out how is probably the issue. And I agree, Merrill Road will be way too pretty to be hauling rocks down on. So I'm not opposing any of it. I'm just saying a few things. But the hillside, I know where they're going because I watch them climb up the front part of the hill.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm just sensing there may be some concern that the hauling of the rock is valuable enough that more will be hauled than is necessarily to be hauled.
How do we make sure it's loose?
That it's, well, I mean, you can loosen anything, so.
I'm Justin Whitworth. I'm the other half owner with Matt on that property. And just a couple of questions. I don't know if anyone here can even answer this. So we're talking about 80,000 yards of rubble taken away. We address it as rubble. Is this being taken away just as an expense, or is this actually turning into profit in that situation? So this is actually just they're making a lot of money off of this, is what we're actually looking at in this situation. So it's almost, I guess that's one of the reasons I'm kind of upset. It's originally happened illegally, and what he's looking to get is it almost seems like approval to make money off what he did wrong.
Don't ever do that again. Make
Yeah.
a couple $100,000.
Exactly. And just to reiterate what Matt said, he actually contacted me as well and said the same thing, where I'll give you the same deal I gave Larry to give me some of that land, and we'll haul it away and give you a percentage of the truckload. So kind of
Thank you.
the
I
idea of what
appreciate
there was there. So thank you very much.
Well, it was my understanding in the beginning, at least, it was told that that he thought that he was on county property, and if he was on county property in that section, he would be fined, correct? And so from the developer's standpoint, or the guy Young, who would normally get the permits on something like that?
He wouldn't be fined. I mean, yeah, the county's doesn't really get too involved in it, but there's still It's a mining operation, right? It's not. Huh? It's an ag operation if it stays on site. If you haul it off site, it's a mining operation.
Well,
Well,
can we settle that debate? 'Cause I wanna know the
Okay.
answer.
I think the problem is the burden of proof is on the landowner, and they were wrong. Okay,
Well,
there
so
was
I'm
not a
not,
due diligence.
I'm not as much
We
concerned
don't-
about
we
the
don't
landowner
know.
as Young, who is.
Well, yes, and I'm.
So what is his burden to be getting on somebody else's property?
Well,
He's
there's-
obviously got permission to get there.
Yeah, well, yes, there's clear requirements that are associated with coming in and extracting this material. And the requirements, the burden of proof is on the contract. That's probably a better way to say it. It is on the contractor. And it's well out of the ag area. But the process was never exercised.
No,
There
I
wasn't-
understand.
There wasn't a process to even go through and determine.
So
That's why they were shut down.
As clarification, this is not an ag operation. That's what I'd like delineated and very clarified. I'm not letting this be a debate. Is it or is it not an ag operation once it's taken off property?
Well, they tried to make it sound like one by saying that it's to get more flat land for farming.
And I've yet to have that. Yeah, I need to know that as a council member on this, because if it is, there's a different conversation. I don't feel like this is an ag operation.
Sounds like mine.
Mining operation to me.
Well, and I think again.
Not only, I
to-
don't want this a personal opinion, that by all definitions of what's been done and how it's being operated, this is not an ag operation.
And then, and the fear that I think should
I want
show
the
up
debate
in
to be in.
the conditions is that there's a temptation to take more than is necessary to take because you're making money on it.
Then if it's up to our interpretation, is it fair to say as a council, this does not feel like an ag operation as it's been explained and used?
To me, when you're hauling it off-site, getting paid, you're
That's
selling
no
the
longer an
product
ag
leaving.
operation.
Seems a whole lot different than ag.
They might be growing rocks, but
Anyway, is there anybody else?
Anybody else? Not all entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So made.
second,
You want to vote on closing the public hearing?
Sure. Yes, aye.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellis and I.
Terrific guy.
Thank you. Move on to item D, consideration to approve the ordinance for zone change request. Z-19-13, request for adding the overlay zoning of extraction to the current / existing agricultural 20-acre minimum, a 20 zoning designation. The overlay zone request is on roughly 7 acres, located approximately 273 east, just north of South Nichols Peak Road.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we deny the zone change request Z-19-13 to add the overlay zone for extraction over the current existing Act 20 zone at approximately 273 east, just north of South Nichols Peak Road.
Do we need a reason stated, Chris?
Well, just for the mere fact that I think more damage is going to occur by allowing that zone to be cleaned up, and it's going to exaggerate the damage that's already occurring there. So I'm in favor of that happening.
I have a motion. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it. I agree with the idea that I don't want to reward somebody for bad acts, but I also see some value in cleaning up the bad act.
Well, my thought is by cleaning it up, you're going to exaggerate the act.
Well, so
That's my
then,
feeling.
if that's the
Yeah.
case, I'd like to see us as a council add to the conditions to the point that we mitigate that sufficiently that we believe we're actually improving.
Well,
I'd like to add, if we don't think it's going to look good enough,
It's not.
I think we can improve it somehow. I'd like to take a stab at doing that.
You know, we might could limit the initial extraction to like 20,000 and just see what occurs with that extraction before we approve additional extraction. My concern is that we're going to take too much because there's such value there.
I lead more with both what you're saying and what Councilman Turek is saying, is that our cleanup is an operation that's financially driven.
Well, that's there again. You want to clean up, and it turns in. You've got an extraction zone now. You You opened up
Now
extraction.
it's fair game, so I don't.
It's the same thing as saying C3, C2. You opened up extraction.
I second it.
I
Oh,
second.
you
He
second it, just
seconded
go
it.
ahead. Yeah.
I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Belliston, nay.
Granger, aye.
Clough eye. Ward nay.
Okay, that passes 3-2. Okay, move on to a public hearing. Item E, to consider an amendment to the city code modifying regulations for sections 9-8A-6, 9-8B-6, 9-8C-6, and 9-8D-6. Applicant, Washington City.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a request by the city to amend the code and all those sections, adding or amending the modifying regulations as our discussion last night as pertains to detached accessory structures and buildings in the city. Just adding a few changes in there, and you've had that in your packet. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have before you go into your public hearing, but if you have none, I'll get into your public hearing.
All right, this is a public hearing. Any of you that have memorized those numbers and want to make a comment on it, we would appreciate that comment. And if not, I'll entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second to close.
Ward eye.
Clough eye.
Granger, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Turek, aye.
Okay, move on to item F, consideration to approve an ordinance to amend the city code modifying the regulations sections 9-8A-6, 9-8B-6, 9-8C-6, and 9-8D-6.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve an ordinance to amend the city code modifying regulation sections 9-8A-6, 9-8B-6, 9-8C-6, and 9-8D-6.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Ward eye. Clough eye.
Granger, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Turek, aye.
All right, that's approved. Item G, consideration to, public hearing to consider an amendment to the city code for detached accessory dwelling units, section 9-8A-7 and 9-8B-7. Same applicant, Washington City.
Again, the city's wishing to add a new section, section 7, into the 9-8A and 9-8B sections of the, which are all residential sections, allowing for detached accessory dwelling units. Again, we had this last night in your work session. Fix those minor adjustments in your code like I did in the previous one. Sorry, I forgot to tell you that, but be glad to answer any questions if you have any, or move into
Did
your
you
public
fix
hearing.
the parking?
Yes, we added the 2, and I took away the 19 inches and made it 19 feet. So those 2 items have been taken care of. Thank you very much. Yes.
And I can't remember, what was our discussion with the back, with the size? Did we make any changes with that last night? I know we had that discussion of 50%.
No, that wasn't on this one. That was on your previous one. We fixed that.
All right.
Yeah, we went to the ones and made it like we had talked about. I got those clarified. Yeah, this one is a 650 max.
Okay, again, public hearing to discuss those detached accessory dwelling units. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion, we'll have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ward eye.
Clough eye.
All right, we'll move on to consideration to approve an ordinance to amend the city code for detached accessory dwelling units. Excuse me. Sections 9-8A-7 and 9-8B-7.
I just want to say that I really appreciate the concept that maybe we're going to be able to help families with the older generation and the younger generation. And this won't apply to many homes that aren't on big enough property, but where they can do that, they can help significantly. I think it's a really positive family-oriented staff. And so I would move that we accept this ordinance as changed or as amended in the city code.
I'm happy to second that.
Motion and a second.
Ward aye.
Clef eye.
Granger, aye.
Turek, aye.
All right, thank you. Item I, correct? I got lost there. Public hearing to consider an amendment to the city code regarding guest parking requirements for multiple family developments, section 9-16-12.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, we're going from 5 to 3.5 from 5. A parking stall is required in the guest parking for multifamily developments, and that's a simple change here. So glad to go into your public hearing if you're ready.
No.
Just clarifying, previously for every 5 units, we had to have an extra parking stall. We're now moving that to 3.5, every 3.5 units.
Yes,
We
for
have to have
visitor,
guest-
yeah.
guest parking stalls.
Yeah, so if I had a 20 unit development, and right now I'd need 4. Now I think it'd end up being 6. So.
Thank you, Drew, for the clarification. Again, public hearing. I will entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So made, Mayor.
Motion of a second. All right, let's change it up. Councilwoman Granger, you start us off.
Councilman Granger, Woman Granger. Aye.
Clef eye.
Ward aye.
Turek, aye.
Bellis aye.
I was waiting for Bellis to. I was-
Okay, that's approved. Item K.
No, that wasn't
No.
approved. That was a.
Oh,
public
that was the
hearing.
public hearing. Excuse me. Item J, is that right? All
So,
right.
so item J, on the consideration to approve, we discussed last night adding or modifying it for mixed use and looking at the difference between townhome and apartment developments. With that in mind, I'd make a motion that we table in orders to amend the city code regarding guest parking requirements for multifamily developments for staff to be able to add those 2 sections in.
Well, I'll wait.
All right. I have a motion. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
By way of discussion on that, didn't you make a suggestion other than tabling it and going forward with it?
Yeah, I said you
thought we had
could
talked about-
approve this one tonight, and then we'll, over the next little bit, I can go in and get some more data, and then we'll come back and just modify this, and instead of having just one item, it'll have 3 sections for multifamily, for townhomes, and then for mixed use. They'd each have separate calculation things. So it's either option, whatever the council wants to do.
I'd
I'm
prefer to
fine
get
with
I
it.
think it's needed. I'd prefer to get it on the books, at least something on the books, and then move forward.
We already have it on the books. We just have it at a different calculation.
Much lower.
Right. I prefer to get the increase on the books. Yeah. And if your concern is that if a townhome,
A townhome certainly does need more parking than an apartment.
yeah,
Because typically townhomes, you've got.
but your concern is that if we
families,
move
more stuff.
forward on this, an apartment complex would be overly, required?
I'm
I'm-
concerned with the fact that it does need to be looked at different parking. Right now, it just says multifamily. What does multifamily include? That includes everything. That includes an R2 zone.
Yeah.
Right? That includes all of it. I think it needs to be looked at separate, especially when you have areas of mixed use with commercial, because they have overlapping parking
but
requirements.
most of your mixed use are going to come in. Well, can any of them come in that aren't PUD? You'd be looking.
Sure,
at
you
a
have
mixed use zone.
R3s and R2 zones. You also have multi-use in PCDs, that would fall into that.
You'd still have, the count, well, that's my point, is the council has an opportunity to address those in the PCDs. So it's not as big of
Well,
a
and
concern.
tabling it also puts a little bit of urgency to the staff to get it done and knocked out, right?
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
have a tendency to agree with Councilman Ward. I'd like to see something get in place and then modify.
I think
Do I have a motion and a second?
Yes, you have a motion in a second.
You
We're just-
wanna-
We're discussing the motion.
We have a second? Yeah, we did.
Yes. I waited for the,
Negotiations.
So I do have a motion and a second unless you want to,
I just don't like changing ordinances that much. It's a cumbersome process. We're in the middle of the process right now where we don't have to go back and restart the clock.
Well, and I can appreciate
That's a no.
specifically the one that concerns you. I have never seen it come to this community yet. Not to say that it couldn't. Because
certain it
we
will?
just haven't seen that mixed use process at this point. So to me, there is a little time to continue to massage. We do that all the time. We continue to massage them. I guess my biggest concern is I've always been a proponent of more parking, especially in these types of developments, and I think it's needed. That's why I pushed it.
so walk me through the process then. If this is tabled, you wouldn't necessarily have to start back over with your, taking it back to your planning commission, or would you? You're making a significant.
To be
upchange.
honest,
You're
I think in fairness to them, it
Yeah.
probably should go back. You know,
It really
what
is.
you don't have to go back to square one,
Yeah.
but I'd have to go back to square, two through their,
What's square one? Remind me.
square one would be going right back and starting all fresh and starting my advertisement over and taking it to a public hearing with them, et cetera. You could go back, the thing is, you could ask them to revisit it with again, it's always the council's option. You can either accept their recommendation, you can accept it with modifications or deny it. And sometimes those modifications, you can just do those modifications if you feel you don't have to go, but in a case like this particular thing, I probably would send it back to them, changing that much. Because it's a pretty good overhaul, even though we're only, we feel like it's 3, but it's going from 1 to 3. That's
There-
200%.
I mean, there does seem to be a connection to the number of parking, to the kind of use, and perhaps the height that's put in there that creates space for the parking, depending on how we build the density up versus, and it seems like that those things ought to somehow be combined. And I personally would think that we ought to see it in its clarity rather than suppose it's going to happen before we approve.
okay, I mean,
Either way, you think it's time to go back to the planning commission. So if they continue the public hearing, you want to back it open and continue the next one. If they made that correction, you would still think that would need to go to the planning commission for the recommendation on that.
As much as I think they're wanting it changed, or the way I'm seeing, some of the language, I mean, if you just come and said, you know what, right now we're going to say for townhome developments, we're going to go 1 per whatever. And then for mixed use, we're going to say 1 per whatever. I don't know if I'd have to go back, but if we're getting into a multiplication of this versus that, and if this scenario happens and we have all these extra drawn out calculations, I would definitely say I'd take it back to them. But if you simply just put up numbers 1 per whatever right now in those 3, I don't know if I'd be so concerned, because they're still multifamily. But I'm just saying, if we change it as much as we talked about last night, maybe ought to go back. But if you just had something quick right now, you wanted just as a council agreed upon and said 1 per this and 1 per that for those 3 types, probably be okay. So that's, sorry to, how did you just phrase it for me a second ago? That urgency.
So the motion
Yes.
is on the table, right?
a table. We have a motion and a second.
Warden A.
I feel no good because I can see the value.
You
of
can
both
recuse and
sides.
force the mayor into them.
He
That's
can't
just-
recuse.
No, I've got no reason
Can.
to recuse. That's stupid.
Well, if he tries to do it, I say we go all British Parliament on him. Start pounding on the table. Yeah.
Clough, nay.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, nay.
All right, so it's not, the motion dies. I can consider another motion.
I'm trying to find it here.
Yes.
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve the ordinance to amend the city code regarding guest parking requirements for multi-family developments, section 9-60-2.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Turk, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Ranger, nay.
Oh, geez, Clough eye.
Ward eye.
That approves 3-2.
But I still,
I think that there is definitely some need to come
Yeah,
back. and
exactly.
yes.
add some appendages. I would
think-
agree, the appendages need to get in there, but.
Yes.
Yes. In a very 3-2 way, yes.
Okay, item K, public hearing to consider an amendment to the city code for the height regulations, sections 9-8D-4, 9-9-4, 9-10A-4, 9-10B-4, 9-10C-4, and 9-11-4.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, we had great discussion on this last night, and I'll just leave it at that and turn that over to council's ready to go in their public hearing.
Any additional comments or questions for Drew? If not, again, it's a public hearing, folks. I see everybody stampeding to come up and talk about it, so I'll entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So made.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Ward eye.
Clough eye.
Ranger, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Turk, aye.
Thank you. And then we'll move on to item L, consideration to approve an ordinance to amend the height regulation sections 9-8D-4, 9-9-4, 9-10A-4, 9-10B-4, 9-10C-4, and 9-11-4.
And as I stated last night, I like, I don't think we have enough time with the last change we made on this. I would just assume see this one die. I think we can get another chance to look at it as we get a little more information into the council.
You want to table it?
Not necessarily. I'd make a motion that the consideration to approve an ordinance to amend the height regulation section 9-8D-4, 9-9-4, 9-10A-4, 9-10B-4, 9-10C-4, and 9-11-4 be denied.
For what reason?
On the grounds that I already stated, that we have an ordinance that we changed very recently. I'd like to see that play out, give council an opportunity to get a better sense of what the height regulations ought to be. And I think it's working properly and fine the way it is.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on that.
So,
Turk,
so,
nay.
yeah.
So you want an additional comment?
No, nay. I'll follow up and just say nay, but the reason why is because I think that I think this ordinance needs to get put in place, but I think it needs to be, some of those heights need to be looked at adjusted up and per certain zones. Because if you're going to approve the project, or if you're going to have an approved use, you need to have in the ordinance the height to be able to accommodate the use or the density that you just approved. And I don't think 45 feet is sufficient when you have in your ordinance a hotel is an approved use, for example, or an R3, a high density residential is an approved use. The only way to achieve it is by the height. I think it's too short.
Well, I think we had that discussion last night. We need to put good ordinances in place that achieve what we need to be, so everything doesn't have to come be hashed out. Developers know what they can get. So I appreciate the research.
Okay, I have 2 ayes and a nay, 2 nays.
Yeah, I'm a nay with the intention that we have another motion that tables this rather than negates it.
Okay, so. Did you vote already?
No.
I made the motion.
Oh,
And the motion was to deny it and let it die.
right.
Clef eye.
Yes, but yeah. So the motion dies.
The motion dies. I'll entertain another motion.
Then I would make a motion that we table consideration to approve an ordinance to amend the height regulation section 9-8D-4, 9-9-4, 9-10-A, 9-10A-4, 9-10B-4, 9-10C-4, and 9-9-11-4.
Okay, there's a motion to table. We'll start with Councilman Ward.
Second
Do I need
that.
to put a date on that? I probably do. That would be January 8th. How much time does staff need I guess you've got the guidance.
He's being considerate, okay?
Let's table it to the next meeting and have a workshop prior to that so we can haggle out those details and help staff work through it. There we go. I like that.
Okay, I do have a motion and a second.
Ward eye.
Clef eye.
Granger, aye. I did.
Bellis and I. But with the statement that I think that they need to tie back to the zone and then the heights need to be adjusted accordingly up. So.
Terrific.
Okay. Move on to item M. Public hearing to consider an amendment to the city code for Title VI, Chapter 7, Public Ways and Property Standardized Street Addressing.
Probably wonder why I'm grinning. This is my last item tonight.
Is it? You're gonna read.
Sorry,
You're
I'm-
gonna read the whole thing.
I'm not. I could read it if you'd like me to, folks. We got still a lot of night left. No. Again, we had our discussion last night. This is a proposal to add, like many of our other cities close by us, a standardized street addressing ordinance for folks to go by and to have in place. And I think we talked about it a little bit last night, and I'll just step aside for your public hearing because I think this is just a boilerplate model ordinance for standardized street addressing. So.
Largely for the purpose of emergency 911 vehicles and so they can be put
Yeah,
in
our
GIS.
county, our county 911 people are the ones who came up with this and wanted all the cities to adopt and be on the same page. So.
Thank you, Drew. Again, this is a public hearing. Any of you worried about your address?
Won't change.
Your address won't
anything with the
change.
new ones. Yeah.
My goodness.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Motion, I have a second.
Second.
Terrific.
Granger, aye.
Clef eye.
Ward eye.
Okay, thank you. Item N, consideration to approve an ordinance amending the city code by adopting Title VI, Chapter 7, Public Ways and Property Standardized Street Addressing. Motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve an ordinance amending the city code by adopting Title VI, Chapter 7, Public Ways and Property, Standardized Street Addressing.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second.
Ward eye.
Clef eye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Terrific.
Thank you, that's approved, and now we're standardized. Item 10, MOU and agreements. Consideration to approve a memorandum of understanding for impact fee credits for the Shooting Star Park. Barry Blake.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I've included in your packet the information for this, also an executive summary. Do any of you have any questions on this item?
Take us through the high points on this.
So let me just read the description on the executive summary. This is just a memorandum of understanding between Western States Ventures, who is the contractor, the owner of the Shooting Star Development, and who built the park, and Washington City regarding parks, recreation, impact fee credits. So we are issuing them impact fee credits for the building of that park.
And it's 1.26 million.
That's correct. A little bit more than that,
Sorry,
1.2.
So that's for, and you got down that that's for 340 residential units.
Yeah. They have to be used on that last, you look at the last page, so they have to be used in that development. They can't be transferred to another project they're doing. And that really eats up about all that. That'll probably eat up all their, basically all their
So they're just gonna
credits.
monetize that through the,
When they come in for a building
through the
permit, they'll use
through
that.
SNS Homes or through the other developers.
Yeah, when they come and get an impact fee.
I think it turned into a great park. Beautiful
Yeah,
park.
it turned out great.
Certainly enhanced. You look at the quality of the homes being built around it. Wow.
Yeah, and people they're using it, not just from the shooting star, but from, blocks away. Yeah, yeah, it was an area that was needed.
All right, thank you, Barry. Any other questions for him? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion, we approve a memorandum of understanding for impact fee credits for the Shooting Star Park.
I'll second.
Motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Dallas, aye.
Granger, aye.
Clough, aye. Ward, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item B, consideration to approve an agreement between St. George City and Washington City for provision of public transit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is kind of bringing to a head a little bit what this council has been working on, some of you for years on end. And with the passage of the local county option with transit that occurred in June this last year, this opened up the way for the negotiations between us and St. George City on the SunTran, extending SunTran into the downtown area. We've had a lot of individuals in some of our areas that have questioned this. So this is the recommended, this is the agreement before you, along with the appendices. The only thing I would say is if the council, we would recommend an approval. There are a couple small, non-substantive legal things we would add still. So if there is a motion to support, we would ask that you.
What are the?
Well, there's just a couple of little things like, for instance, let me see if I can find it. They talk about replacing a bus. I've just asked for the language like kind. So things like that. We are going to probably add just a standard dispute clause.
Yeah.
And there might be one or two other words.
So we don't need to put that in, we just need to, if we're gonna approve it,
So these are not
subject to legal
substantial
counsel approval.
things you need.
Non-substantive.
Non-substantive.
Wording.
Right.
So,
The appendices that's attached was the route previously recommended by SunTran with our input. And it hits those areas that, one, it makes the routing function for them, and two, it hits those areas that we feel are of high critical need, such as, we've had a lot of interest in people in St. George City trying to get to the Walmart, Kohl's area, so that's a real positive to us. The pickup station would be at Desert Industry. That's where their last, so if you picked up there, they would, their routing kind of around that way is theirs, stopping at Walmart. Then it goes down, so it can pick up the south side of Telegraph Street in the downtown area, comes back up, it'll go out to the Winter Haven, Kings Row area, which quite frankly has been our largest demand area. Then up and across over to the community center. Community center's also been one that's been requested from those outside the community. And then it'll continue through the downtown area on the north side of Telegraph up to the Mill Creek area and the Warm Springs area, which also again is one of our multi-family areas, and then cut back down and over to Desert Industry.
So there's also a loop that goes out there to the fields.
No, it just picks up Sullivan.
If we find,
Yeah, that's the Sullivan Park area. Where they cut off, they're going up 1100. I'm sorry, they sent this over, but it goes down to Winter Haven. It cuts up right there to up 1100 or Commerce to pick up Kings Row, Pine Valley Townhomes. Then goes up, and I can't remember the development up to the left.
What's the apartments up there?
Bluffview. That's across Bluffview, then down over to the community center, and then to the north side up in the downtown area, then up Main Street to the Warm Springs area.
Can I assume that this usage will always be subsidized?
Well, it depends on what you mean subsidized, because right now, the anticipated transit tax will generate about $491,000 a year for us, of which right now only about half of that will be used for this bus route. So
Okay.
it's all coming from the .10 that we would not otherwise qualify. So this is this is basically a no impact upon our funds, but makes us eligible now to pull the transit funds in order to be able, and it's only going to take, actually, if you see the number here, it's the first year is almost 300,000 only because of the bus purchases. Then it drops down to 200,000 and then it escalates from there. So basically is about half of what we're going to be collecting currently with the transit funds. If we chose not to go this route, that is not $491,000 we have access to.
So,
But
so
also-
the fact that we have this option is because we took the action we did.
That's right.
Exactly.
Which I can tell you is continually being brought up.
But,
Is
but
there-
also, if we don't take this action, then likely the county would put that in place anyway.
Exactly.
It would
So
just
the
go.
The county had roughly,
No.
without us involved, with everyone involved, they had an opportunity
Not
at
for this
$1.2
route,
million.
but for their own.
Right.
Correct.
What they wanted
It's
to
either
do was-
us taking, either us taking it up or them taking it up.
Correct.
Correct.
What they wanted to do was harvest those funds for their
Right.
system.
Project.
Yeah.
The fact that we made that resolution gave us control.
Access.
Basically, we could either say we want our own bus route or we want to partner with the county route. But I think this is a win-win because you now have a split in those funds where we can partner with the county and we can service our community.
My greatest thing about this, I really appreciate, is that funds through our council and how we'd like to participate rather than it coming to us with whatever's left over. And I think we have enough needs that we really need to focus on the needs of our citizens and participate. And we're fine helping the county. There's some great services we do. But I like this perspective of control, which we have. as
Do
a
we,
county.
do we get to the point where we measure usage against the cost? In other words, do we, if our usage isn't adequate, and I don't know how you want to define adequate, but if usage is not adequate, do we decide at that point whether we want to continue with this?
Yes, if you noticed in the agreement, there is the ability, it takes about a year to withdraw, which is understandable. But there is the ability to withdraw. Let me go back to your question, Councilwoman, because I think it's a good one in that I think we answered it. It's not tapping on any existing funds. But on the other hand, does mass transit typically cost more than it generates? The answer is absolutely yes. And we've also recognized we have had growing demands by underserved citizens that feel that, and again, we talk about affordable housing issue and all the other things. We have had growing demands by our citizen, and it's always been a little bit of that question of what comes first a little bit. Does the service demand drive demand, or do we wait till demand drives service? And I think it's been pretty well found out that it does a little bit. You have to be conscious of the latter, but it'll also.
Yeah, and I think you get to the point where you say, okay, now we need to look at it. You know, we've offered the service. Is demand going up? Is it,
I agree.
is
And
it
that's-
meritorious? We probably ought to, on a regular basis, I would suggest, bring that before future councils and let them know where that's at and what the recommendations are, because I think there's a tendency is when we start to offer new services to continue forever. Generally, I don't mean here necessarily, I'm just saying generally, get mass transit, you got mass transit forever, and maybe we won't need it forever. It's worth looking at.
Well, that's a good question. So what would be the process for review on this? It would only be in the budget that we would have a chance to view it, or would we have?
No, you just rely upon St. George. They operate and manage the
Right.
system. So we'd be receiving numbers and data from them on that. And
Is that in the contract to receive those on a certain quarterly basis or?
No, but we could ask it because there's a clause in there that we can monitor folks at any time.
Yeah.
You know,
It would be
another-
nice to have that in there on a regular basis, just to take a look at it. I mean, I do recognize that we say this kind of thing about buses, that they don't necessarily pay for themselves. We don't necessarily say it about roads, but roads they don't pay for themselves either. It's a tax burden, or you can say that about a lot of other.
Keep in mind, there's also, I'd like to know this to the council going forward, is there's peripheral benefits by having transit within our community and that we're not talking about that are significant. I look forward to the concepts of addressing affordable housing now that that's within our community. There's concepts that can now come into our community because of it. The way we handle with tourism and we handle with just the youth and our ages there's so many things that come inside of this that are on the peripheral that we're not discussing that I look forward to having that benefit.
We are such a large community, my caution, the reason for the caution on usage is that we're such a large community, we can't begin to serve all of the needs of the people in all of the places that they live in this community. So we're doing a very limited source. So for us to think that the transit is necessarily going to get somebody to the workplace just might not be what is able to happen. If it gets some people, as I've seen, who have no transportation to get to the grocery store or something that live in areas and they just don't. I have a lot of empathy for that, but I just.
One of the communities that I've spent some time with is actually on the county community of disabled citizens that have this very need of trying to get to places, whether it's to the grocery store, whether it's to get their hair done, whether it's to get to work, those types of things. And I can almost get as emotional as we did with the Dunk Center, because I've had those people stand before us and testify of the need, and we haven't been able to provide it. Sitting on a previous council, we thought we were there, we thought we had it, we approved it, anyway, long story short. I'm happy that we got it forced tonight, because there is a need in our community.
So let me add
You'll
one.
see it being utilized.
And I'd like to add just one more. I mean, I became aware of a situation, even just, and again, this is, I don't think anything's inappropriate on these discussions because we're a constant evaluation. We became aware of a young girl that because of the needs being met with Washington Elementary, she gets up extremely early in the morning because she lives over in the Pineview area, to walk to Washington Elementary each morning. And this would serve, again, we are going to probably have limited service. There's also paratransit service that we haven't talked about. The paratransit services for those who have those special needs within the routes that we have a requirement to pick up to get them to doctors and other things. So I think we're just like cultural arts, I would say. We've arrived to the point of having this discussion, but to all your points, it's absolutely good points. We need to continue to evaluate it. We've surveyed time and time again in preparation for this for probably 10 years, and clearly we would say there is no other part of the city because of both density issues and interest that at this point would make any sense to serve than this downtown area. And so I think it's certainly a noble discussion and also the idea.
I appreciate you leading into the paratransit. Can you just talk to me about how that works?
So from what I understand, and I'm probably not the best one to speak to this, but the paratransit, if you're so much distance from the established route, and a half mile, thank you, and you have a need, then that they have to come to a door.
They'll make a phone call and they will come send a vehicle to get you to that.
So, and we would be purchasing a single vehicle for that and a single bus.
Yeah, so it'd all probably be the same. I suppose if they have a lot of paratransit, they can put in a smaller bus and do that. That would be up to SunTran, how they would handle that. I would note too that if the council approves this tonight, we're still probably 18 months because of the construction of the bus. Now, if the council approve this, we are talking about the fact that to see if we can maybe piggyback on a bus order with another city to make it faster than 18 months. But a decision tonight, let's just say a decision tonight could very well be 18 months before we still even have this service available.
That's good to know.
I want to thank St. George City and SunTran for their willingness to expand where, we've tried and failed in the past. And I think it's the fact that they already have the bus system set up in place, running, makes it so that it's a very cost-effective venture for us to be able to serve our community. Whereas if they weren't in place, I don't know that we could ever look at doing that. So I want to thank them. I do really appreciate the fact that we've spent the last 4 years trying to get it done. And on the last meeting of 3 of our terms, we have the ability to move it forward. And with that, Mayor, I proudly like an opportunity to make a motion on this one.
Do it.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve an agreement between St. George City and Washington City for the provision of public transit, subject to legal counsel approval.
Second that.
Motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Ellis and I.
Ward, aye.
All right. That will be awesome. There is an outside shot. Never mind. We'll be on record. In visiting with Mayor Pike, he was considering ordering an extra bus in their next order. So, and that was a couple of weeks ago. So I'll find out.
I think from what I've heard through the rumor mill that probably took place, and it may be sooner than 18 months.
We would hope so.
Yeah.
So I just didn't want to.
You don't want to
mislead
get
anybody
people
on-
looking forward to it when it may not come through, but there's a high likelihood that'll take place.
All right, we'll move on to item C, consideration to move forward with the drafting of an interlocal agreement or like instrument between Washington City and Hurricane Valley Fire for the bonding and purchase of a ladder truck.
So I've included in your packet an executive summary on this. There is some interest on Hurricane Valley to move forward on the purchase. They've approached us with respect to this. Council set aside, the funds. The trucks basically run about 1.3 to 1.5 million. So this council set aside one-time funding of $150,000. And so within your executive summary, you'll see that based upon their approaching us and what we feel could be our needs, this would be a way we could structure this purchase at this time using those funds. So, I'll answer any questions. What the action is tonight is if you're in agreement, then we'll begin to put together either the interlocal or if there's an instrument that's better for us on equipment.
I think this is a great addition to our fire department. Some things that we've done, especially with Hurricane Valley out in Coral Canyon area. And that'd be a great asset to our community, especially as we're seeing more motels and higher buildings here that need for those ladder trucks and whatnot. And it's just, to me, it's a great opportunity to work interlocally together as two communities and not just say, you buy your ladder truck and you buy your ladder truck. Let's work together on these things. And both of us benefit from it.
So I agree with that, Rod. Just a quick question, Roger. This is just directing staff to
go ahead
allocate the resource and go ahead and do it.
The instrument will come back to the council.
Well, I've always supported our fire department and public safety components.
Mayor, if there's no more discussion about it, I'll make the motion that we move forward and give staff the go-ahead to begin drafting of an interlocal agreement or like instrument between Washington City and Hurricane Valley Fire for the bonding and purchasing of a ladder truck.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Thank you. So noted.
As a follow-up to that, I think I really appreciate that the staff's gone forward with Hurricane Valley Fire and split the cost with them. So we get full benefit with half the cost of
Can't
not
get a
only
truck
fire
cheaper than
station,
that.
but a truck that we do need for the community. So I'm going to vote aye as well.
Okay, that's approved. To move forward. Item 11, bid awards. Consideration to award the bid for the Main Street project. Public Works Director, Mike Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. On December 5th, we publicly opened bids for our Main Street project. We pre-qualified on this project because it's a very intense project. We had 5 pre-qualified bidders. We only received 2 bids on the project, Sunrock and Interstate Rock. Interstate Rock was the low bid at $3,637,396.85. And staff is requesting awarding bid to Interstate Rock.
It's going to be the nicest section of roadway in Washington City.
In the
And
state of
I hope
Utah.
at the end of the day, the people recognize that.
In the state of Utah.
No doubt.
$1 Million Highway.
Well, that's the one in Colorado.
The gorge was named that as they were building it. They had a
Really?
nickname for it.
I really feel one of the best things about this concept is really taking care of the community that's there, but also protecting the Main Street identity, as you brought up. I feel it also really addresses the flood concepts which we've had prevalent in the area. So all of this really respects the existing community and really gives a new standard of how we can truly make cars a part of a community. I feel a lot of our roads are designed to where they cater only to cars. It makes it hard for community members to interact with them. So this is a good step. It's a better standard. I hope applies to other parts of our community as well. I hope it's not just a Main Street thing. There are places where there's a huge demand to make sure our residents are taken care of in our new standards. So this is a good thing for us.
Thank you. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Make a motion that we award the bid for the Main Street project to Interstate Rock in the amount of $3,637,396, and don't forget the 85 cents.
If they put it, let's do it.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion. Do we need to hold it for a second? I have a motion and a second.
This is a conversation.
Turek, aye.
We good?
We're good.
Ellison, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ward, aye.
All right, thank you. That's
Thank you.
approved. Item B, consideration to award the bid for the Boilers Park project. Leisure Services Director, Barry Blank.
We had 3 bidders on this project. JP Excavating, Interstate Rock, and Vancon Incorporated. The low bid on the project was from JP Excavating. The bid for this project, the low bid was $1,522,000, $448.69. We would recommend that we award that project to JP Excavating.
If there's no discussion, I'll make the motion that we award the Boilers Park project to JP Excavating in the amount of $1,522,448.69.
I have a motion and a second.
Ward, nay. I was disappointed. I was told that this would come before the council, before it went out to bid, and we would have a chance to look over the project. I haven't had any chance to celebrate. I've heard some good things about the project. Found out just tonight on a phone call that we were having a trail coming in, and I love that. I love a lot of the concepts, but I expected to see it come before council before it went out to bid.
I did meet with council members that contacted me and wanted to go do that, and so I know.
But it was you who said it was going to come back before council before bid.
I don't recall that, but I
do.
Okay.
Clough. The motion was to approve, yes?
Yes.
Clough, aye.
Yeah, it's been a long time. There's been a lot of controversy over the boilers and certainly a lot of historical caring about that area, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into finding a better situation for the roads and the land exchange. And the fact that now that it will be a park, they'll be both active as well as ability to go sit there and enjoy that beautiful view and that water. I appreciate all the work that's gone into bringing it to this vote, and I vote aye.
Right, that's
Thank
approved.
you for your work on that.
Thank you. It'll be a beautiful park.
That's approved 4-1. Item C, consideration to award the bid for the improvements for the Green Springs Park Improvements Project.
So we had a lot of the same construction companies interested in this project to look at it, but we only had one bidder for this project.
Maybe I should have bid it.
You should have. The bid came in, so the engineer's estimate on this was I think 320,000. It came in at 297,901, and that was John Orton Excavating. So we would just recommend that.
I have a quick question on this, and it's probably for Roger. We've already approved some budget funds and some RAP funds towards this.
Yeah.
This is just the budget for the park.
It's just accepting, just awarding.
Just awarding.
Awarding the bid.
We don't have to juggle funds in the process.
No,
No, we have the
and I'll
funds
have to
for
go
it.
back to exactly what the RAP fund is, but this tonight is just.
Mhm. And I think it was over $300,000 that we awarded for the RAP tax for this Green Spring.
I can probably look it up while we're here, but this is just the award.
Just curious.
Or if I can, this is really of great intention to try to turn our retaining pond areas into more usable park space, and maybe even the practice space for a soccer team or whatever ends up being there. And I appreciate that you moved this forward and that we're going to try this experiment in redoing.
And this is the last one. So all the other ones that are retention, we now have that the parks have been designed that way are all now grass. And so this would be the last one that we do in that. And we will in the future do that.
You're seeing St. George doing that now too.
Yeah.
Well, our land is becoming more and more expensive and more difficult to acquire. And so with permission, I'd like to make a motion
Absolutely.
that we approve the bid to the John Orton Excavating for the Green Springs Park Improvement Project in the amount of $297,901.95.
I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Granger, aye.
Clough, aye.
I appreciate Councilwoman Granger's persistence at
Yeah.
watching for that and trying to utilize that. Ward, aye.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you,
Thank you. And
Barry.
that will be a big improvement there. It will look a lot nicer than what's there now. So thank you.
Okay, not last item, but letter. Consideration to draft a clarification letter regarding Northern Corridor. May I turn that time to you, Councilwoman Granger, to
Sure. I
present another idea with this?
Yeah, I probably talked that to death last night. Still want to make a couple of points. One is that in all of the Northern Corridor, there's no part of it except where it connects to Washington Parkway that affects homes. In looking at consideration for that, I also think it's important that the city not appear to be creating complications for the Northern Corridor, as it is supportive of that concept. So would therefore ask that in my motion that Mike Shaw show and share with them the drawing that we already have for a possibility of a change, and would also add the clarification that if that change is necessary to occur, that if the Northern Corridor is approved, that be paid for, that part of the change be paid by the Northern Corridor, not by Washington.
So are you suggesting that we ask staff to do this as a council motion?
No.
Or just that we ask staff to do this?
We're just asking staff to do this, and we're not going to have an official motion from the city council.
I would support that as well. I think we talked about a design that was already out there, and if staff could render anything, have them specifically present that design that's already out there, and if they could render any more intelligence to that process, with other designs that as they work through it and see that that would fit, I would encourage them to supply that as well. Thank you.
Do we need to vote on it? Okay. All right. All right. Mike has agreed, and you're all happy. And we're close to being done at record time with 98 million things on the agenda.
It's amazing agenda.
Okay, we'll move on to item 13, report of officers from assigned committees.
Mayor, I'm going to take just a moment as that report and bid my farewell address to this council and to our community. It's been a great experience for me and an opportunity to serve the residents of Washington City. And I certainly appreciate the citizens that have entrusted their trust in me over the past 13 years to be a part of this process. I've learned a lot. I've experienced a lot. It's been a great growing experience for me personally. And I certainly have made a lot of friendships and relationships that I cherish and will eternally cherish. I think those are the things I'm going to miss most, is the good friends I've made as council members, with staff, with citizens as we work through processes. And I'm going to miss that intimacy that's involved there. So with that, let me thank this council. You've been one of the best councils I've served. Had some great experiences. We've got a lot achieved by what we see tonight. There's been some great things we've worked on a lot of years that this council's been able to achieve because we've worked together very well, and I appreciate that as council members. Thank you. I look forward to good friendships and relationships going forward forever. And again, I just want to thank my family for their support. They've been a great support to me for a lot of years, as I've taken a lot of time, as you well know, what service here means, and it takes from our families. And again, I want to thank staff. This community is as great as it is because of the employees and staff that we have here. As a council, all we do is screw it up most of the time. So anyway, I hope to get around personally, thank staff, but if I don't, let this be the thanks and appreciation for your friendship and all you do for our citizens in our community. Thank you.
I second that.
I wish I was half as eloquent. I'll tell you, I've said this many times. I thought I knew a lot of people in this community, and running for council and sitting on council lets you know how small you really are. But I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the friendships. Certainly, I don't see it as a council staff relationship. I see it as a friendship. I get people tell me, hey, councilman, don't call me councilman. I'm off the clock. I'd rather relate with you one-to-one as peers, not like the rank structure. They got rid of the rank structure in the Army. So, but I want to say thank you to everybody that supported me. I've enjoyed it.
It's been a privilege to work with all of these men, and some very capable people that have supported the council, including all the department heads and others, our service departments. I've learned a great deal. I've been carefully taught, and I've watched a council learn how to be a council rather than individuals, and have found that to be a delightful experience and the right experience for a council. It isn't what we do individually, it's how we do it together that matters, that we debate. We even at times get close to arguing. We do at times feel passionate about things, but we're still listening. And it is in that listening skill that a council grows. And I've appreciated knowing all of you with great respect. I appreciate the privilege of being here and having been here, and thank you.
And Councilwoman Granger, I have the distinct nobility of winning a golf tournament together at the UAMPS, and we beat these guys that were so mad that they lost.
Mayor, I'm reluctant to say anything because I wanted to just give these guys the last word, but I will miss your wisdom and your input. There's just been a number of times in the last, just as I started thinking about not having you there, you think, oh, who's going to bring points up like that? Just bits of intelligence and unique points. I've appreciated. All of you have trained me, and I appreciate your leadership and training. And I will miss you. But I do hope. I am still glad we all still live in the same city.
Well, forgive me, I was going to talk about mosquitoes, but I don't feel like it's appropriate. You see so many differences before you step on a council. And once you step on, the service that you guys have given has really, really baffled me. It's a lot of work, and it hurts sometimes with the genuine that you put out is not always received. And it takes special people to truly stay committed. And the special thanks to Councilman Turek. My goodness, you're insane. 3 terms of less, and the service you've given and the information that you've passed on, and in all respect, Councilman Belliston and Councilwoman Granger, I am deeply grateful and humble, and I appreciate what you've done to help me have a better perspective of the needs of our city. You've done great with your council, and you've helped us set a good tone, and you set a good example for me, and I hope to preserve that and look forward to make it better. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll move on to the city manager report.
Well, I agree with Councilman Clough. I won't ruin the atmosphere. Drew started. I didn't know he had a heart.
The man with the heart. So I feel like crying right now, just remembering that moment.
I'll just simply say that on behalf of all the staff, it's been a pleasure. We're honored to affiliate with you.
Let's get out of here.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
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 I feel like this is some sort of a Grinch revelation that